really tricky.
Okay,
I think it will be.
we're up.
I really don't know.
Good evening. It being November 16th, Thursday, November 16th, 2017. This is the New Durham Planning Board running a special meeting to accommodate our Thanksgiving holiday here. I'm Scott Drummond, the chair, and as normal, we're going to go around the room here and identify ourselves for those people watching.
Bob Pritchard, member.
Rod Doherty, representative from the Board of Selectmen.
Dot Bezell, member.
Jeff Allard, member.
Rick Goodrich, alternate.
Okay. Now, Freeman is a new alternate member. He'll get sworn in a day or two. Okay. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Seeing no one in the room for public comment, if anyone on the board had any agenda changes or other items to add that are not there. Yeah, Freeman.
I would just like to request the board's indulgence in my asking of questions that have obviously been answered well in the past, and so I guess I apologize to the board for bringing questions to the front that may not apply.
Don't apologize. The only foolish question is one not asked.
And I'm right with you.
Yeah, Rod's new this year, and he's getting up to speed. But it's a steep learning curve.
There's a lot of us in that boat.
Yeah, there's a lot to pick up on. It's a very steep learning curve here. So no apologies at all. Please ask questions. Let's go with if any other agenda changes. Are we good? Let's go through the minutes. Get that out of the way.
Are we making the agenda? We're not doing A? Is that
I don't know. Are we still doing A? Okay. We probably will do item A. We can. Although we haven't read the whole thing, so we should probably still table it.
Wait, what?
The excavation ordinance that the Board of Selectmen wants us to look at. We keep receiving copies of just the odd pages.
Right. Did we want to do that for 4 minutes though, or?
No, there was an earlier discussion.
No, whether we're doing it at
Oh,
all.
whether we would table it at all.
I don't think the Board of Selectmen is really pressing on this.
Yeah, I don't want to discuss something I've not read.
Okay.
We keep getting copies that are only half of it because it's a double-sided document and
So that's
it's
tabled.
missed.
Okay.
So we're going to table that tonight.
Fine with me.
So let's look through the minutes.
Everyone's on page 2, under review of ordinance relative to street excavation. We didn't review the ordinance.
No, we did not.
We decided to table the review.
Right, tabled. Right.
So
I'm
just
going
change-
to back up to the bottom of page 1. After Mr. Allard's motion, I just want to put a little topic headline in there. Review of other zoning ordinance amendments. Because we have a previous topic headline of the sign ordinance in a previous paragraph. I just want to make sure people understand that's not what we're still discussing. Because there's several amendments were discussed in the following 3 paragraphs.
Do you want to just change that from sign ordinance to zoning ordinance? And then everything falls
Yeah.
under it?
Even amends to, yeah, I guess we could do that.
Yep.
Also, there, in the motion, it should be Article 20, Roman numeral, and Section F.
Yeah, agricultural signs, right?
Yep.
Article 20. What was that? 20
Section F.
D? F?
F.
Okay.
On page 2 under mail and correspondence, the second full line, it says, well, it starts, Ms. Vizel stated the Ethics Committee is planning to conduct a session. I would strike similar to the one last year, and the session will be on 91A, the right to know law.
On the topic of 91A.
The right to know law with Attorney Burns.
Okay.
So strike similar to the one last year on the topic of ethics. So it'll be on the topic of the 91A, the right to know law.
Okay.
Back to page 1, bottom paragraph, starts sentence, Mr. Craycraft stated, he didn't make revisions to the ordinance, he has proposed some revisions
Yes, you're right.
to the ordinance. And the sentence that begins on page 1 and ends on page 2, there was also discussion of defining options for property owners to change their woodlots. What?
I think it was remove the woodlot designation.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a
To remove woodlot status?
designation status, yeah.
To change, or is it
Either or.
to change their woodlot status? Okay.
It's really the woodlot designation they want
Right.
removed, so it becomes a
Okay, so-
buildable
To
lot.
remove their woodlot designation.
Okay, to remove their woodlot designation. Somehow that just did not sound right.
Well, oh, go ahead.
I said, and the next sentence, Ms. Zusko explained the calculations and guidelines set by, okay, is calculations correct? It just sounds like a,
I think for clarification, it's really property assessment or something along those. I think there's a need for some type of clarification there. Just because we go from woodlot designation to calculations. And I think we were talking about because it talks about Department of Revenue Administration, so it was property assessments,
should we
basically tax implications.
make a new paragraph when we start a new topic? Just so we don't bunch
Yeah.
them all up.
Might be useful.
Okay, so Ms. Zusko could be a paragraph.
Well, actually, that kind of goes along with the woodlot.
Does it?
Yes, because that's what I was talking about. We were talking about taking it out of, what would happen if they took it out of woodlot? Would it still be in current use? Would they get, how would it affect their taxes?
Well, then you would need to say, and their implications on, maybe to explain. Like Mrs. Go explained the calculations and guidelines set, and their implication on property, the woodlot status.
Their impact on woodlot taxation?
Taxation, yeah, exactly, because the taxes.
Okay, you guys are gonna have
now.
to repeat that because I wouldn't.
Okay.
Yeah, it
So,
kind of explains.
Ms.
more of
Zusko explained the calculations and guidelines set by New Hampshire Department of Revenue Administration and their impact on woodlot taxation.
It really ties it together.
That explains what it was that Laura was stating.
And then at Mr. Allard, start a new paragraph.
Yes.
Do the same if there was discussion with our ideas. That could be a new paragraph.
But that's all part of the travel trailer thing.
Yeah, I guess so.
Any other changes?
That's it.
Did you get those, Laura? Okay.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the minutes of November 7th, 2017 as amended.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Okay, Freeman, you don't vote unless you've been admitted. You can discuss any issue,
Okay,
but unless there's an absence on the committee and I appoint you to fill that slot, you can't vote, all right?
gotcha.
And you can never replace Rob. That's just the rules. Rob is irreplaceable.
No, Rob can be replaced by.
Well, I know, it's not what currently is
Yeah.
happening, so,
But not by us.
all right. Legally can, but the board has not given us a replacement. Okay, so minutes are done. There is no mail, as I understand it. So we're gonna jump right into, we're gonna skip item A, reviewing the street excavation ordinance, because we just are receiving a full copy of it. We keep missing half of it, because it's a double-sided document. So we're jumping into the zoning ordinance review and changes. Who wants to go first? Doesn't matter to me.
Well, since it's the shortest one, let me get it out of the way.
Thank God.
The let's read the bottom
Would this
of the
be
pile.
obsolescence?
Obsolescence.
Yep.
Favorite
Which
word.
I certainly understand why I couldn't find it in so many regulations, because it is referenced as a state regulation, and therefore. And I can go from memory.
Yep.
Yeah.
Somewhere buried here. Yes, okay. We talked about the fact that we wanted to have this clarified a bit, and we felt that adding the phrase, a reduction in usefulness or desirability or a failure to meet the current building codes because of an outdated design feature that cannot easily be changed without incurring unreasonable expense. So I added failure to meet the current building codes,
Right.
and a change that couldn't be made without an unreasonable expense. Also, we added, even though it's stated in the state, when grandfather status is lost if the rebuilding structure is not.
Yeah, I wonder if we want to put that in there or not. Because if we're going to put it in there, it needs to be explained a little better.
What, the grandfather?
The grandfather sentence. I'd like that explained better if it's going to be there. If we're going to leave it out, I mean, it exists in the ordinance
Yes, it
contextually
does,
about,
Yeah,
you know, that statement is in the ordinance when the word is used,
okay, all right.
if I remember
I
correctly.
thought we said include,
So-
but okay, no, that's fine.
Does everyone agree with that? Do we include that grandfather statement? Does it need to be, if we do, should we define it better? Because to me, it's kind of a statement coming out of left field a little bit
Well,
within that definition.
that's a hard one to implement in terms of obsolescence. I'm wondering, does it belong with obsolescence? Fire, tornado, natural events, you got a date.
That's where. it's
Well, that's
included.
where
it
the
is.
context in the
Yeah.
ordinance comes in, because all those things are explained in that
Right.
paragraph.
Right,
And
but with
obsolescence is included in that.
but
Right.
when did it become obsolete? You can't say within 2 years of what?
Of demolition.
No, it's
Well, but the others, it's 2 years of the fire, or 2 years.
understood. Right, it's regarding the grandfather status.
Right, but for obsolescence, it's 2 years within what?
I think it's
Within-
demolition, isn't it?
Yes.
That's what we were talking
Right.
about.
Yeah, it is.
Right, so maybe we need to go back to that paragraph and modify, I don't have that.
Well, then in that case, then it would be, okay, grandfather status is lost if rebuilding structure is not complete. Oh, 2 years
After
after
demolition,
demolition.
right.
So if I add it after demolition?
Well, no.
I think we need to go back to that ordinance paragraph and take your grandfather sentence for obsolescence and
Okay.
put it in there.
Which ordinance is it?
I don't recall exactly where it is, but it's in there somewhere. It's under it's in the non-conforming lots section.
It might be page 16 to 23, or
Yeah, where's your,
somewhere be 13 and 26, some pages in there.
yeah, non-conforming, here we go.
Here we go, 21 non-conforming, 113.
Yeah, page 113.
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah,
21
paragraph B,
B.
21B.
Yes.
Partially restored, any non-conforming property which is partially or totally destroyed by reason of obsolescence, fire, or other acts of God or nature may be restored or remodeled if done so within 2 years, providing, however, that the proximity to a lot line, reference line, or right of way may be no nearer than the lesser of the original building location or the non-conforming setback requirements below. So, a grandfather paragraph, grandfather sentence here. I mean, the 2 years is in there,
Or you just want to state that the
But-
grandfather status is
for,
lost?
right.
Well, it's obvious what it means in terms of the fire and natural causes. It's
Right,
not obvious
when
what
that,
it means.
when we went, right, it's strongly implied, very
Right.
strongly implied that at the act of God is when the 2-year state starts.
Right.
But I think you may want to put a sentence at the bottom here saying, for structures partially or destroyed by reason of obsolescence. I don't know how to word it, but grandfather status.
Yeah, how about grandfather status for obsolescence is lost if
Right.
rebuilding of structure is not completed within 2
Okay,
years?
yep,
And that could go under 21B,
right at the end of it, right at the end of
Right.
that paragraph.
right, and take it out of the definition.
Obviously grandfather status for obsolescence.
Of obsolescence.
And Dot, did you say these definitions came from the state? Is that right?
No, I said, no, that when I went through zoning ordinances and I tried to focus on communities that have properties that have lakes in them or some kind of recreational thing, because that seems to be the area of contention where people are using that as a reason to demolish the properties.
Yep.
And I couldn't find anything that dealt with obsolescence. Well, I understand why, because it's in the state regs and there's no need for towns to repeat it. In other words,
Okay,
it's
but-
covered by
but
the
does-
state regs.
Does the state define
No,
obsolescence?
well, not that I could find. And
Okay.
this is, I think
Yeah,
I
I
found this
remember-
in the Stratum ordinance.
Okay, Bob or somebody, somebody found it last week.
In the state
when
regs.
we looked it up.
Yeah.
Yes, it's in
Yeah,
the
state regs. So I
regulations.
thought the one from Stratum was good, that's why I put that
Okay.
one in, brought that one into discussion.
Oh, that's where this came from? You found it in
Well,
the Stratum?
we've added 2 things since last week. I added, or a failure to meet current building codes. So in other words, obsolescence is a reduction in usefulness, desirability, or a failure to meet current building codes because of an outdated design feature that cannot be easily changed, and then we added, without incurring unreasonable expense.
Right,
And that's in definitions that are all over the internet as well.
yeah,
The same thing,
There's that
yeah, the
functional
essence is there.
obsolescence.
right. I
This
think, yeah, it's not so crazy of a thing.
Well, it's
Yeah,
got, at
great.
least it's got some definition to
Right.
it. I mean, it was just
Right.
open-ended before. Second, repair, I got the impression you thought repair was okay. I did add the sentence on the end, repair does not allow for total demolition of the structure. In other words, you cannot take the whole house down
Right.
claiming you're repairing something. But it's a replacement or mending of parts existing or in a state of deterioration with equivalent materials and for the purpose of maintaining their quality. Repair does not allow for the total demolition of the structure. And to remodel is a modification of architectural design, color features, or materials of a building.
Right. Does remodel allow for total destruction?
Does what?
Does remodel allow for total demolition of a structure?
If you're talking about materials of a building, you can take the building down and put it up with new material. So you kind of want to.
That's why I want to ask the question.
Right, it doesn't, you want
Does it
to
allow
put
for
it in there,
total,
but it's not.
total demolition of a structure, yes or no?
Well, do we need to repeat that sentence? Remodeling does not allow for the total demolition of the structure?
That's why I'm asking. I don't
Okay.
know. I'm asking the board, do we want to put that in or not?
Yeah, I don't interpret remodeling as meaning rebuild.
Yeah, I don't either, so we should put that in there,
Yeah,
let's
I
say
agree.
so,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Well,
Okay, okay, all agree with that?
Yes. Can I go back to obsolescence for a second?
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't know whether, I wanted to bring it up just because it was
Yeah.
on my, it's defining the when of obsolescence seems kind of
The
arbitrary. The when. We agreed a 1928 cottage out at the lake was obsolete because it was built in 1928.
Right.
My house was built in 1987. People coming in, look at my kitchen and stuff would say, that's pretty obsolete.
Right.
So how do you define
But
when
Okay,
something
but-
becomes obsolete?
right, but is it just your kitchen that's obsolete or the whole structure?
No, just the, but I understand that who kind of defines how much time goes by or what's wrong with the building that is obsolete?
You did that when you put in that, without incurring in an unreasonable expense. So
Right.
it's gonna cost you
I mean, that's still
more money.
subjective. I don't know. You
It is
can't-
subjective.
There's no way to get around this being subjective.
Yeah.
It's going to be a subjective definition.
So,
But, you know, the owner of the property says, here's my structure. I want to remodel it, update it. To update the existing building, it'll cost X dollars. But if I destroy it and rebuild from scratch, I can do it for 25% less, or a lot less. That, to me, is how you define obsolescence. When it costs more to fix than it does to wipe it out and start over.
Well, that's certainly true, but what if it costs 50% as much? But I choose to tear it down and rebuild it, because I think it's obsolete. That's where
That's the subjectiveness, and I don't know how we're going to get around that.
I think the only way is we make that decision whether we agree with the individual or not. I don't know if we have
Yeah.
that kind of authority, but it would seem to me that's.
Right. That's the question.
Yeah, I don't know a good way to get through that.
Right, well, I think that's the important question. Is there any point at which the town of New Durham can tell someone you can't tear your house down and rebuild
Yeah,
it?
I don't know.
I mean, we don't have anything
This is not
here
an-
that says you can't.
Well, the building inspector, the CEO has to get a building permit. So he's the one that's going to make that call. Maybe we should ask him that question.
I mean, is there
How is he
any-
going to make that call? Or how can we define something in here to help him make that call?
Well, that's what he's looking for. He's on.
Right.
Right, he's looking for more definitive
Yeah.
guidelines. I mean, some of this is so open for interpretation that when he reads it, he's like,
Well, that's
Well, I think the question is there any, this is what keeps going through my head when we talk about this. Is there any circumstance under which the town wants to or legally could say no to tearing a property down and rebuilding it?
If it's a
This is written as if
non-conforming-
we could say no.
If it's a non-conforming lot and what they propose is going to make it more non-conforming, we
Right.
absolutely
Right.
Then we could. Then we
need to
could.
say no.
But
Yeah.
if I'm gonna tear the property down and rebuild it, and I meet the setbacks and my septic's fine, and I'm not increasing the footprint,
you just
Right.
don't like the house anymore, you're gonna tear it down and
Right.
build another one in the same footprint, are you
Right.
grandfathered?
Right.
Well, you wouldn't necessarily tell a person he cannot tear it down. What you'd say is, you cannot rebuild.
Yeah, you're exactly right, yeah.
right,
You can go ahead and tear it
You can
down,
tear it down.
Tear it down.
Yeah,
but you can't rebuild
yeah.
and,
And make it a more non-conforming
Well,
situation.
you can't
Make
really
it
do
more
that if they're
non-conforming.
building in the same footprint.
Right, you can't do that. If they stay all in the same footprint and follow all those, and do it
doesn't
within 2
become-
years, then here's the more important question, why would we want to stop them?
That's my question.
That's the more important question, why would we want to stop them?
But
Yeah.
this
Is there a reason, let's come up with a reason we would want to stop them. If Rod wants to, just needs to redo his kitchen, but he decides he wants to wipe the whole house instead,
That's my business.
is that his choice?
Are you on a
Sure.
non-conforming?
As
lot?
long as he stays within all the,
This is from
within
the
the footprint,
non-conforming
within all the
section.
if he
rules.
wants to retain the grandfather dimensions,
He has to do.
he has to
what he
rebuild within 2 years.
Right.
I think probably rather than belabor this, I'm not sorry I brought it up, but it seems to me that we kind of have to go on a presentation by presentation of what's needed and
Yeah.
make the decisions practically. rather than necessarily.
Yeah.
with a-
I mean, I'm trying to come up with a reason why would we want to tell someone no?
But Scott,
Yeah,
doesn't this word
yes.
come from the non-conforming uses
Yes.
of property?
It's
So
non-conforming.
it's already non-conforming, that's why we have an investment in it,
Right,
into protecting, right, that land, that environment.
right.
So there are reasons why we would look at someone doing an action because they want to declare it obsolete. When you're saying, do we have the right? On my property, you wouldn't, there's 100 acres there. I
Right.
could tear my house down and,
Right, but the thing is, for all of these different reasons, act of
This is a
God or act of
non-conforming.
God, yeah, but for all of these reasons, act of God or determination of obsolescence, they still, regardless of why they want to destroy, rebuild the whole thing, they all have to keep it in the same footprint, in the same
And you
setbacks.
can't really.
Under all
deny that.
circumstances, they always have to stay there, within all those grandfathered limits.
right. On a non-conforming, well,
Right.
actually,
Yeah.
they could
Oh, yeah.
establish another building envelope that makes it less non-conforming.
Right. Then, yes, that's of course also allowed.
Yeah. But,
I mean, my question is, I don't know why we have this in here at all, really. My feeling is, that it would be that the better thing to state is any non-conforming property may be partially or totally destroyed or whatever, torn down, whatever, and rebuilt as long as it doesn't become more, that's not the right words, but as long as
it
the
remains in
new
the same
structure
footprint.
is not more non-conforming, or as long as it stays
Yeah.
within the same footprint. Because we're never gonna say no.
Yeah,
Whether
as long
was
as
a
it
fire
stays,
Or it's my choice, it doesn't really matter.
right, as long as it stays, you know, within the 2 years of destroying it, and that the proximity lot line, all the things we have here on page 113, proximity to lot line, reference line, right of way, and no nearer than the lesser of the original building location. You know, as long as all those things are still maintained,
Yeah.
if you don't like the color of the house, you can destroy it and rebuild it if you want to. I don't care. If you want to really do that, I guess to me that doesn't matter. If you want to go through the expense of completely destroying your house because you don't like the color, I'm being very extreme on purpose here. As long as you follow all these other rules, I don't care.
Yeah, actually, that's
Right?
C
If you
is
go back-
the right word.
But if you go back to the statute, I think what it's just referring to is if the house gets destroyed for whatever reason,
Yeah.
goes into disrepair, it's deemed a hazard, whatever,
Yeah.
the fire department or the code enforcement
Right.
officer deems it, then after 2 years, you cannot rebuild it there. That's all.
Yes, the
That's
2 year,
a-
yes, the
very
2 year
unique-
window is
But that's a very
critical.
unique situation. It's not talking about other people that want to remodel in kind.
Right.
It's basically the house that's not
Got
there
hit by a
anymore.
tree.
Yeah.
They got leveled by a tree. It's
So, I mean,
really,
it's a unique situation that this is
Right.
referring to.
but the word obsolescence is there, and it's been used as a
Mhm.
reason for one case that we just heard, and that's why we called for the definition of obsolescence,
Right.
because it was challenged. So either we remove the word obsolescence from the regulation, or we work to define it so that it's more useful to people, you know, looking for guidance. They look to the regulations for guidance.
I think you defined it pretty good.
Shouldn't
And You're
recognize it.
covering,
So I go in a circle on this. First I say
I know.
I don't need it. And then I say, well, if we've got it, we've got to at least make
I
it
don't think
useful.
we need it. If we're gonna keep B,
Yeah.
I think we should address Bob's point, which is that if a home becomes hazardous for
right.
some reason,
Tree
through
fell on it.
obsolescence, acts of God, fire, whatever, if a house becomes a safety hazard for whatever reasons, then it needs to be torn down and rebuilt within 2 years. That makes sense to me, but to
Right.
lump into that, this issue of obsolescence and would we allow you to tear your house down and rebuild, I think you're mixing apples and oranges there.
you're saying that if the code enforcement decides that somebody's house is in disrepair and a health hazard, they have to tear their house down and rebuild it?
It would
I can
have
name
to-
at least three places in town that have been sitting
That's
for
right.
years.
That's right.
Because the people can't afford to
Right.
tear it down and rebuild
Yeah.
it yet. You can't.
but that was Bob's point, and that's a valid point to me, that if there is a safety hazard, if the house is condemned, whatever, that within some period of time, it should be either repaired, remodeled, or rebuilt. Yes, I think that's fair.
I don't
I don't think
think it's
Because
it's
fair to tell
I know
somebody
the
they
house
have to
is-
tear a house down.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, well,
But do we allow people to build unsafe houses? I mean, why do we?
If they're
allow
not
people-
living in it.
okay,
It's just sitting there.
let's address an example here. I have an old house, it has, ancient electrical wiring in it. I come into town for an electrical permit to, add outlets to one room. I wanna add outlets to one room. Come in with the electrical permit, I don't explain the whole situation, I get my permit, but when the inspector comes to inspect it, he sees that the entire electrical system is completely out of date, and he doesn't approve it until a host of repairs are done. I can't afford to make those repairs. 2 years goes by, I can't afford to make those repairs.
You're saying
Does the
you
building
tear a
inspector
house down.
condemn the house and say it's unlivable? Could the electrical system be so hazardous that is the case, and it goes on for more than 2 years? Now what?
That to me
Does
is-
my house need to be destroyed now, leveled? I don't think so, but
Well, that's taking it to a different.
I like taking things to extremes, it gets the
Right.
point across.
But I think Bob was referring to a hazard to the public. Like, I'm thinking of a house that has been, partially burned and there's a cellar hole and rotted timbers.
Okay.
That has to be demolished because it's a hazard for public
Okay.
safety.
And I believe we have something already in our ordinances that say that you have to get that all removed and stuff.
Right.
If it's been burnt down, you've got so much time to clean the lot and and get rid of the debris.
Where's that?
But if you've already got a house standing, it's not falling in on itself yet, I don't think we should have the right to tell somebody they have to tear it down. We've got a house sitting here in this town, it's been empty for probably 9 years, and both of the original owners have passed away. It's going through estate stuff. And you're saying that should have been torn down 6 years ago because nobody was living in it? It was condemned, it was labeled a health hazard. But it's their property.
It's a fine line, isn't it?
Well, and to what extent is the homeowner
Nobody goes in there.
responsible for someone trespassing and getting hurt?
Right, well, that's a liability.
That's a liability
I
issue for
understand.
them, not the town.
Right.
That's sure, but
Well, but is that a health hazard, just like you're saying? That's the same thing if it's.
I'm trying to find that paragraph about what you just said, I'm
I know
not,
it's in
I don't know how to
there.
find it.
I just saw it.
I went first because I thought I was so easy. It would go so quickly.
I mean, yeah, I think we'll probably be fine if we just make the changes we first advocated making.
Yeah.
I think
Just
it's.
get the definition of obsolescence in there and add that grandfather status sentence
To
to
the-
end of paragraph B. I think
It's,
that'll pretty well cover us.
The section you're looking for, Scott, is on page 32, 6C1. No owner or occupant of the land shall permit any building or structure thereon to be left in a badly damaged, dilapidated, or unusable condition, whether caused by fire, the elements, or from any other cause. Property so damaged, dilapidated, or unusable as determined by the fire chief or CEO shall be repaired or rebuilt, or the ruins removed to ground level within 1 year.
Okay. Okay.
So that covers that. I don't know. I have a lot of trouble with this.
Yeah, an unusable condition in my electrical permit issue, the building inspector could come in and say, this is too dangerous for you to live here. That makes it an unusable condition. Your electrical panel is rusted, or whatever, make up whatever you want to say about it, but your electrical system is unusable.
I mean,
It's too hazardous for you to live here.
that paragraph pretty much describes the house that you guys were just talking about.
Right?
Your electrical panel is an issue for your insurance company, not for public safety.
Well, the insurance company, if they found out that you had fuses instead of circuit breakers, they would get very upset.
Yeah, that's an issue for your insurance company,
Yeah.
for sure.
But isn't that that's a potential public hazard? If my house catches fire, it could spread to the next house. That's still a public hazard.
Yeah, but your house could catch on fire for any number of reasons.
Yeah, but if there's a known hazard that increases the risk,
But who's gonna know the hazard?
well, the building inspector just found it.
Why would the building inspector come in just?
No, because I went to get a permit and he saw it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can't have, I'm not.
I mean, yeah, the building inspector just doesn't wander into houses.
No, not at all.
But the circumstance you're describing, I think, is covered, Laura, under that paragraph. If it's dilapidated and unusable, it should be torn down within a year.
House I'm referring to is not dilapidated, it's still standing.
Yeah,
Oh, it's vinyl
Roof
siding.
hasn't caved in.
right,
On the outside, it looks okay.
Well, if that's,
right, that's, yeah, our example house on the lake was not dilapidated.
right.
Right. But it was gonna cost them more to
Fix it,
repair it than
Right.
it was to tear it down and build new.
right.
Yeah, given that there's not a circumstance under which we could say no, if someone wants to tear their home down and rebuild it, as long as they don't make it more non-conforming, or
Right.
they stay within the current footprint,
Right.
then I think that paragraph is moot. I think it's irrelevant. We can't say no.
It's in the RSA though, and if somebody came to you because they were doing something that was gonna make it maybe a little more non-conforming or move it to a different portion of the lot, and they wanted to use obsolescence for a reason, they wouldn't be able to if you remove it completely. Or they're apt to say, well, the RSA states obsolescence, why does the town ignore that?
I don't think that changes anything.
Read paragraph C.
I'm
Read
just saying it
paragraph
doesn't
C.
have to be obsolete. I can tear it down for any reason.
Read paragraph C.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
got paragraph C?
Yeah,
Does
yeah,
everyone
I
have
just
a copy
read
of
that.
All non-conforming property may be used for new construction of buildings and/or structures, including septic and leach fields, and any non-conforming building may be altered or expanded, provided, 1, they conform to non-conforming setback and height requirements below, 2, such expansion does not make any existing lot, structure, or use more non-conforming within the terms of this ordinance, 3, state requirements for underground waste disposal requirements are met. Doesn't that cover everything?
To me, it does.
So should we not define obsolescence? Since it really is an open.
Does a building
term.
destroyed by fire come into this? Does that qualify under paragraph C? I guess so.
But
If
then you don't need
non-conforming
2-year
property.
grandfather clause.
I think C ought to read that any non-conforming building may be rebuilt, remodeled, or repaired, provided. Because that's really the reality. It doesn't really matter if it was affected by fire or a tree or anything else. Or I just don't like it. I can always tear it down. Or remodel.
What do you think?
I don't like to start tweaking things without
I know.
knowing the whole statute. I get really worried
I know.
because everything's intertwined.
I know,
Well,
If we start unraveling the rat's nest, who knows what's in
I mean, the people that put
This
this
text has
together.
been here a long time. It might be safer to just add our sentence, define obsolescence, and move forward.
If you delete B, you're taking away your within 2
Your
years.
2 years thing, right,
And that is on
grandfather
statute.
protection.
right.
So I mean, it's in statute, so it would still apply, but it's in here probably just to make it very clear to people because we don't go rummaging, at least most of us, don't go rummaging through the statutes all the time.
Right, well, the thing is, though, if we take out paragraph B, right, they're 2-year thing. Someone has a property way too close to the shoreline, but it exists, right? If we take out paragraph B and they destroy that property, the only text they have is paragraph C, where they have to conform to the non-conforming setbacks. So even though they had a building 10 feet from the water, if we take out paragraph B, they have to move it back to 50 feet, regardless of the reason.
They lose non-conforming status.
They lose that grandfather status, right?
Right.
And that's not fair.
Right, and we don't want to do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got a neighbor, for example, that has a waterfront lot, it's quite
Yeah.
small, and she had the cottage that sat on it, as I understand it, predates when I came here. But I've been told and let's assume this is true, she had the fire department burn the cottage down, as a controlled
Burn. Yeah.
exercise thing. Well, this happened like 10 to 15 years ago. Well, and it's never been rebuilt. Well, does this paragraph mean that she now no longer can build anything on that lot? Are we going to tell her no if she comes in with a plan for a non-conforming? Because it has to be non-conforming. It's a tiny little lot on South Shore Road. And they burnt the place down years ago. But do they now no longer have a right to rebuild anymore?
Yeah, that's
She
not
wouldn't
fair.
be grandfathered to build in the same footprint. She would have to follow all the setbacks if it's been
The
10
current
years.
setbacks, yeah.
Yeah,
And if she didn't have 75 feet,
Yeah, so she'd have to be.
She'd have to get a variance and,
Right.
go through the whole process.
Okay. So that applies anyway.
yeah,
Because she missed the window to be grandfathered.
right.
Okay.
So paragraph B is important.
Yes, it is.
I think we just add that grandfather status sentence to the bottom of the paragraph and add obsolescence and definitions, and I think that's our bet for it.
Okay.
And are you comfortable with that definition, or?
I like the definition, yeah, I do. I think that's about as well explained as we're gonna get.
I won't mention it again.
And take out grandfather status is lost, blah, blah.
Right,
And
remove
that-
that sentence from the
That just means
definition,
it, right.
add it to the bottom of paragraph B.
Now, who types this up? Who gets this ready for the warrant?
I can do that, it might be easiest for me, because the formatting can explode very quickly if you don't follow it.
And then you want to keep the sentence after repair. Repair does not allow the total demolition of a structure. And you also want to add that sentence after.
To remodel.
To remodel.
Yep,
Okay.
yep,
Those are the ones, and you
yep,
next
there's
up.
3 definitions, yep.
Now
We don't have repair in this.
Do we have definition of repair?
We have a definition here that Dot's come up with, but we don't use the word repair under non-conforming.
well, I think not right here.
Restored, remodeled,
For some reason I was asked to get repair. It must be somewhere else.
Well, it's under general requirements.
Wasn't that what the ZBA wanted a definition for?
That
the
was
difference
it. That was it.
between
Thank you,
repair
Laura.
and
ZBA
remodel?
wanted to know the difference between
do we want to, okay, then do we want to add that to paragraph B?
Well, it was
Maybe repaired, restored, or remodeled,
and
instead of just restored or remodeled.
Oh, so you're adding,
Well, I'm asking, do you want to add the word repair to paragraph B?
well, it seems to be an issue for the zoning board of adjustment. Because
They had
asked
some,
us to make
they
a
had some
modification.
issue about, was it a total rebuild or was it a partial rebuild?
Build.
That
What
was
is a repair
repaired
and what is a
versus
remodel?
rebuild.
Yeah.
But I never understood why. It never made sense to me why they had that problem with that distinction.
Yeah.
I wasn't clear on that. But we don't use, right now, we don't use repair under 21.
Right.
Under, at least I can't find it in a search.
Right.
And then Scott, that paper I gave you, did you want that included, the functional obsolescence, commercial obsolescence, structural obsolescence? Because it had examples. I gave, And he said, I think that would be good to include in the ordinance. Ordinance.
Where did that go? You gave it to me?
Gave it
Thought
to
you
you.
did.
Lauren.
No, maybe you Laura. Did you give us all a copy or not?
I made copies. Did I give them to, I thought
I don't think they gave them
Those
out.
were the extras that we had. Oh, I made them when I made his
Right.
copies too,
Right.
sorry.
Yeah, do we want to, okay.
Do you have yours or-
Well, he's behind.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, these are the ones we looked at last week.
Right.
Right. So the next question is, how do we, the definition of obsolescence? Do we just stick to the one definition we've already been provided? Or do we put sub-definitions in?
Or
And
you
do we
just-
need, if we do that, then,
Just want to use the examples, the 4 examples.
yeah,
You know, for example,
right,
rooms of improper size, features that are no longer useful, out-of-date plumbing, inadequate insulation, you know. I'm not advocating for this, I just know that we said that this might be helpful
right.
last week.
You
I
can
think-
put this
I
in the
think-
definition section?
That's the, yeah, what,
Where do you put
do we
the
add
word-
any or all, any, some, or all of this to the definition of obsolescence?
One out, put the word obsolescence and then do bullets, this type.
Well, right.
This is this, and this is this, and then.
Right,
you're
but then,
I think Dot's definition is adequate, and the reason is, it's gonna come down to a matter of judgment anyway.
Right.
I think you can clarify till the cows come home.
Building codes really covers
Right.
that.
Mhm.
You can clarify, and you can clarify, and you can clarify, but it isn't gonna change anything. It's gonna be a judgment in the end,
Okay.
So
I think.
I'm
So-
just sticking with your definition.
So
Yeah.
Dot,
I think I agree with that. We'll just, if we get too, if we get the definition that's too narrow, then
Yeah.
people find loopholes, well, I don't
Thank
qualify
you.
with that definition, or, you know.
clarify status for obsolescence.
So that's.
Yeah,
you did
you
that.
could basically leaves it up to you guys to
Right.
determine how you want to interpret it.
Right.
I'm sorry.
We're agreeing that we don't want to get too specific in our definitions, give us some legal room,
I
some
think so.
interpretive room.
I think so.
Okay. So,
I just heard an NPR piece about the designing of the United States Constitution, and that very concept was battled all summer long in
Yeah.
1787.
how specific?
How
yeah.
specific do you want to be? And some people thought in the end it was going to be a huge failure because the Constitution wasn't terribly specific. And then they realized, no, that's actually the strength of the document, because
Right.
it leaves room for interpretation.
Right. Okay.
Well, the easy one took
Yeah, well, that
50
was-
minutes.
Well, I can, if you want, I think I can go easy.
Okay. So, that's done. So do we want to, before we move on, do we want to seal this? Seal this obsolescence thing and motion it and
Oh.
to go to hearing, this definition?
Okay.
Do we want a separate hearing for each little change? Do we need a separate, how careful do we need to do all of this?
If you're gonna put each one as a separate warrant article, instead of lumping them all together.
Yeah,
I honestly don't know, I can check with Scott to see.
yeah,
I know, and I've read through some of the old town meetings, and they would say zoning ordinance, and it would list, article this is being changed to this,
right,
yes, no, article this, yes, no,
That
and they
makes
were all,
sense.
like, right there.
right. Right, there's several of these are just adding a definition here and there, and, you know,
Because in the end, we're going to probably suggest, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 changes.
Right.
That many warrant articles, I think, would
Right.
confuse people.
right.
Not necessarily, in Alton last year, we had over 30.
Huh.
But it was because the zoning and planning the planning board had made some changes, and each one was a separate article to be voted on. Because when you lump them together, then there's some things you might like and some things you don't like, but you have to reject the whole thing, or you have to accept them.
Right, you gotta balance that.
That's not the right way to do it. I know one town, it was online, they had over 58 articles, because they had pretty much rewritten their zoning ordinance.
Right, because if we put all our new definitions in one article, the town may not like one definition.
No,
And they may strike the whole thing because of that.
No, it's exactly like the budget. The budget will be 3 million point seven blah, blah, blah. Yes, no. That's a terrible way to do it. That's
Right.
what we do. But can't we do what you just said? Which is it's one warrant article, but within that warrant, change number 1.
No,
Yes or no?
I don't think you
Change
can.
2.
It has each item that's voted on has to be its own separate article.
Yeah, it does.
Ugh.
Let's see where we end up.
That's really not that difficult, though. I mean, if you're very clear about you're taking article this, section this, and you're rewording it to say this, plus it all goes to legal counsel and they review it to make sure we haven't put it in the wrong place or.
We can still move this obsolescence change to public hearing without defining how we're going to do it. We can just say we're moving it to public hearing, and then we can lump the public hearing together however we
Yeah,
want.
we could do things like one warrant article could be making minor changes.
Right, minor editorial changes.
Right, and there might be 5 or 6 or 8 of those, and if people aren't gonna not like one of those, but, like the others, that's housekeeping.
Right.
Rather than voting 5 times, you vote once for those.
Right.
And the others that are more important, we could list separately.
Right. I think let's just figure out what we
Okay.
have, and we'll
Fit it
cut
into
them
the
up.
warrant article.
We'll cut them up later.
Okay.
So let's still have a motion
Should
to
I make
move
a
this
motion
forward.
to adopt these, or just say that we move these to
Well, how do we do it?
the definitions?
To hold a public hearing. That's how we did it
To
last
public
week for
hearing.
the sign ordinance. Mr. Allard made a motion to hold a public hearing to revise the wording of section 20, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
So just,
I'm gonna make a motion that we, bring, 3 definitions for, the definitions for obsolescence, repair, and remodel to public hearing. From the zoning excuse me, definitions from the zoning ordinance, which are obsolescence, repair, and remodel to public hearing.
I will second that.
And do we need to amend that to include that sentence that we want to
Right.
add into the zoning ordinance itself?
Okay.
yes.
Then we better withdraw your
Then I withdraw my motion.
Let's modify it.
Quickly
Yeah,
withdraw.
or we can just, we can do an amendment.
Do it amended.
Okay,
Whatever.
then
We had
you amend it, go ahead. Well, I had already taken that out of the definitions, so now you can say and add.
Okay, so let me, what did I do with the definition? Okay. I move that we amend the motion to place grandfather status for obsolescence is lost if rebuilding of structure is not completed 2 years after definition. Demolition, sorry, into section, let me find it again, I apologize. I know what page it is.
113.
113. Into section 21B.
Right. Do we have a second?
that motion?
Do we have a second? Doc?
Yeah, second,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye. Otto?
That was, so that was Jeff Dot. Okay, so that's done. Do I have to get on? Okay.
Shall we now alligator wrestle woodlots?
But I was wondering if you want to go through the building inspector, it should be quick.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Should be.
Okay.
Sure.
Now, if you had that out to all of us.
Yes.
What does it look like?
So the zoning and land use ordinances, page 33 of 123 at the top. Changes recommended by Building Inspector John Abbott.
I have another one, if you can't find it.
Everybody, anybody else need one? Have any copies?
I have copies too.
Okay,
Right.
This is the changes recommended by John Abbott?
Yep.
Yes, he's, actually, so I met with
Do you
him.
have them, Bob?
I do have it, yeah. Okay.
He's, what he wants to do is more than just what's here. He wants to work on better definitions.
Okay.
And what he does is he sort of simplifies it. So I think I was tasked to talk about septic systems and porta potties. So I told him that that's what we probably want to look at first.
Okay.
If you look in the first paragraph under D, where I've noted replace the following, what was there was an accepted sanitary system or in a way that will not be offensive or detrimental to health. And his reaction to that is that, how do you define offensive and detrimental to health? So what he's trying to eliminate is arbitrary. So his was just replace it simply with a New Hampshire DES approved septic system.
Okay.
That's,
And the next one, unless there's any debate, and this is what John wants. These are what he's asking us to do. You'll notice what was there was also a repeat of what was in the earlier part of the sentence. Under the buildings built according to New Hampshire DES standards, he's reduced the text in the original to all dwellings, places of business, and any sanitary system shall be constructed and maintained to DES standards and enforced by the New Hampshire Department of Health and Services, Water Supply and Pollution Control Commission, and by the town of New Durham. It pretty much says the same thing of what already exists, it just says it in a shorter version.
All dwellings. Places of business, sanitary systems.
The original, if anyone wants to follow along,
Two DES standards.
it's original.
I would just say New Hampshire. DES. What's DES? Yeah, I know, but
It's the.
You know, do we need to spell that out? That's all I'm saying.
Oh, sure,
New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services.
that's a good idea.
Right. Let's not add more acronyms.
Then under building regulations, again, sort of trying to get it to be less interpretive of what it's fine. No building or structure shall be erected, altered, substantially repaired, or remodeled unless in compliance with, and what it says now is building officials and code administrators' codes. He just wants to use international building codes, as that covers everything.
Is this in the building regulations
Yes.
document?
Yes.
It's not in the zoning ordinance.
No, it's building regulations.
Okay, so we're talking a different animal here.
Yeah. That's why the first one is zoning and land use ordinance.
Right.
Below it is building regulations,
Okay.
page 6 of 10.
Okay.
And
Is the code administrator's code the International Building Code?
it is, that's really what he's saying.
yeah, it's the same
Right.
thing.
So if we don't change anything though, it's still the same thing.
Well,
Does it limit him by not stating it?
no, he just thinks it's more practical to say what that building officials and code administrators codes is. It's the International Building Code. Which means if you're going now to look for any information, you're going to look under the International Building Codes. It's sort of the same thing in the next one. As a part of the New Durham Building Code enacted pursuant to RSA 674:51, New Durham incorporates by reference the following national recognized codes. Currently it says the International Building Code. He wants to replace it with the International Building Codes, adding the S, 2009 edition.
I would, is that the most up-to-date edition?
That's right,
Yes.
that's the most
Do
current.
you just want to
state.
say the current?
Yeah, because if you say
Version,
2009,
current
what
state.
happens-
Because, right, then next year we'll have to change it again
when
with
the
the 2000.
2018 version
Right.
comes out.
That's what I don't want to get,
That's a
I
good
don't want to do
idea.
that.
Right.
So.
the
and
current
Laura
international-
said-
Currently recognized edition.
Current state approved.
Yeah.
Edition.
Current state,
Well,
state?
is the
Does the
state
state keep
approving?
changing it?
No, the International Building Codes, the state changes it?
Yep.
Current state approved.
That's what John told me anyways. I'll double check.
Okay.
Approved edition,
Current state approved edition.
edition of International Building Code.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
With building regulations, we can change ourselves. We can just hold a hearing and make those changes.
Right, those don't have to be.
If that's not a town thing.
And then reflecting his schedule in the inspections, it currently says the building inspector shall, on 36-hour notice, make any of the following inspections or any additional inspections as required by the inspector on all construction projects. He only works Tuesday and Thursday, so you're
Right.
deleting the 36 hours and adding in building inspector now only works Tuesday and Thursday.
Right. I want to make it, I want to give him some limit. Because if we take that out completely, he can, someone can call up and say, I need this inspected, and he could say it's going to be a month before I get to you.
It might
I don't
be-
want to do that. I
No,
don't want to
but,
put a limit on how long he can push it out.
but that's really hard to do because he only works 2 days a week.
I
And he's
know.
only available for inspections.
But I want it
And the man.
the earliest possible convenience or some kind of language.
You
By
can always,
appointment, how about by appointment?
yeah, but again, the
That still
appointment
gives him
still could be a
unlimited
month.
push out.
always
I
say-
just want to say that
If you give him a time limit, there's no guarantee he's gonna be able to.
that's why I don't want to say 36 hours. But I want to put some pressure on him to get it done.
Well, you're saying you think there is a time limit that's reasonable.
Yeah, something reasonable.
Good.
Right. Within 7
At
business days.
earliest possible convenience, some kind of,
Well, then that's,
I don't know.
That's still.
that could still be the month.
Well, you probably, if we need to define a fine, I think one of the things you've got going on with John is he does it. He does what he can
He
do.
does.
as
Yeah, I understand
quickly
that.
as
I
he
understand
can.
that. I just don't want to get, when
But he's not
when
gonna-
John retires and
Right.
someone else comes in who's a
Yeah.
You're
lazy
gonna have to
bum.
rewrite it.
I don't want to I just don't want to give another building inspector slack. Because we went through 4 building inspectors last year because they were all bums. So I don't want to give them legal authority to be a bum, so to speak.
Well,
being
maybe you
harsher.
change, I think Laura just said, maybe you change it, if it changes and the person comes in and has more time.
Yeah,
If they would be hired to have additional time.
You can always put a limit, within 7 days, within 10 days, within 5.
But he might not be able to.
yeah,
Well, but
He's also our code enforcement officer
Right.
and health officer, and right now the complaints alone are tying him up. He's been running in circles with different complaints around town.
Yeah.
Within a reasonable time frame with that? Or is that
Well, even that's.
too open-ended
yeah,
for
you-
him?
yeah.
well, that does put a limit on them though. Then you can look at, okay, so what's your schedule? You mean you can only handle 1 inspection a day? That's not reasonable.
Depends
that's
what
what
the
he's.
inspection is, though.
You know,
Inspections can be pretty complicated.
I know, but you know what I mean though. You can look at his schedule and say, oh, okay, for the past 6 weeks, you've only scheduled 1 inspection a day. How long did that inspection take you? You can get it, if you put a window on him, a little pressure, then you can, you can work out whether he's being reasonable or not.
I'd say make it specific and measurable, or don't do it.
Yeah.
'Cause that's our
How are you
problem.
gonna enforce it though if you can't keep an appointment?
Well,
That's
I'll-
You can tell him, you can say it has to be done within a week, and if he can't fit it in and it takes 10 days to get out to a place to do an
I know.
inspection, what are you gonna do about it?
but
You're
then
gonna-
does he keep a log of?
Oh, yes.
I have a
Right.
request, well, then he needs to go to the Board of the Selectmen and say, this is my documentation of unfilled requests that I am not allowed to meet because I work a 2-day schedule. This position requires 3 days. I mean, he
Not
would.
budget.
Well, it's not
Well,
a
maybe
budget, but
fees have-
somehow it has to be made a priority so it becomes, so it gets
So,
in
This,
our
well,
budget.
this
He
is-
also
We
works
have
in
to
another
document
town.
the need.
But this,
But
yeah,
he
this,
works in another town.
I mean, if it comes down to it, where you need more staffing and it's a fee structure thing, that should be evaluated. I mean,
Right.
you
I know.
can't be letting this stuff languish. I
I
mean,
know.
I don't know what the time frame is, but
John, make sure that everybody has his cell phone number, and even on days when he's not scheduled here, he's taking phone calls and setting up appointments. I came in at 6:30 on Tuesday morning. He walked through the door, picked up a paper off the desk, and was back out the door, and he had an inspection done before 7 o'clock.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll
No,
speak-
I don't want to
Really,
get,
really trying.
Well,
I know, I
He's
understand he's
really
trying, I
getting
get that. I understand he is working hard, and I accept that
Yeah.
completely. I just,
Yeah, it's not
Well,
about
what
him
if I
or
spoke to
his.
No,
John
yeah.
and asked him what he would feel comfortable with?
right, right,
Or what would he
It's-
recommend
yeah.
for a time?
right. I don't want to, yeah,
I mean, I see with part-time hours, a 36-hour notice is a short duration of
Way
time.
too short,
But a
yeah.
week or two, I mean, is that
He's
reasonable?
he's usually done an inspection within a week anyways. If somebody calls, he does his best to accommodate them. I think the longest anybody's had to wait is like 3 days.
right,
But he's not always gonna be our building inspector, and I understand that's what.
right.
you're
That's why I'm trying to
concerned
put some frame around this.
with. Right.
So do you want to put on 2-week notice?
I don't think we need to put a specific, I'm trying to come up with some wording here. Earliest possible,
As soon as
Earliest possible-
reasonably can be expected.
by appointment at the earliest possible date, or earliest, something like that.
Right.
Some kind, I don't know exactly the exact language, by, shall, by appointment.
Well, in defense of John, I think he's been really conscientious. I've had a lot of
Yeah.
interaction with him. He's a little bit overwhelmed. I don't want to lose him over this, but I can see where you want to have
Earliest,
some definition. So what's the earliest what?
I don't know yet, possible,
Feasible.
earliest.
At his earliest convenience, or wish to that effect.
Mhm.
As soon as reasonably possible, or
Mm.
something like that. It gives ammunition both ways. On his side, to say he needs to put in more hours.
What about that? By appointment as soon as reasonably possible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Does that work?
I think that's good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. So the building inspector shall, by appointment as soon as reasonably possible, comma, make any of the following inspections.
Say that one again, Scott.
I'm sorry.
Say that again, Scott.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you won't miss a call.
And he also works for Barrington. I don't know if
Right.
he's full-time down there.
Right. So the paragraph will read, paragraph 8, the building inspector shall, comma, by appointment, comma, as soon as reasonably possible, make any of the following inspections, et cetera, et cetera.
It's fine. I think that's fine. I think
Does
that's
that
fine.
work? I think that works.
Works for me.
Okay.
Okay?
And that was all we addressed that was related sort of to sewerage and just wanted to find this. But he did ask that we, and maybe it was.
There's an occupancy paragraph in the bottom here, we need to deal with.
Oh, occupancy, thank you.
Prior to occupancy, working at carbon monoxide.
Yeah, currently
Hot water.
it only says smoke detectors,
Right.
so I had carbon monoxide.
Hot water,
And he would prefer doing away with the 120 degrees,
Yeah.
which can be somewhat arbitrary, and just put temperature per code, because there's different levels.
There's a range.
Yeah.
Okay, so hot water parentheses temperature per code?
No,
Parentheses?
just say, detectors, comma, hot water
With temperatures to code.
with temperatures to code.
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot the S on temperatures.
Okay.
I don't understand the wording, electrical all plates on. All plates on, what does that mean?
The cover plates,
All the cover plates have to be on.
like on a light
Oh,
switch.
cover
The
plates.
cover plate.
I see.
And he's just asking that he could, other things that he's found that have been difficult to define with people. He said that setbacks and building regulations do not seem to conform to the zoning and land use ordinance. As with issues addressed on page 1, he would like to have regulations that are standard. He's also concerned there are no regulations about residents living in permanent tents, of which he has begun to get complaints.
The setbacks, I say, he's gotta tell us.
Yeah, what's not consistent? I thought that was
The
consistent.
zoning ordinance, I think, is quite consistent, but I don't know about building.
Yeah, ask him to show where there's a
Okay.
difference. So I don't know where there's a difference.
We have permanent
And
tents.
the permanent tent thing, I thought we actually answered that for him. And I can see where he needs that to be clarified, but I thought we concluded that these permanent tents represent a dwelling, and therefore they come under the requirements of dwellings in the town of New Durham.
Permanent tents?
Well,
Yeah.
Is that a
a
wish?
permanent, well,
It fits the definition.
He's begun to get complaints about them, so they must be here, residents living in
Mhm.
permanent tents.
What is a permanent tent?
well,
It's
just
just-
living in a
Is
tent
there a tent we
permanently.
live in
A
it?
tent that
It's
doesn't
just a
move.
tent
Okay.
It's up here, right?
permanently
Does
living
a
in.
tent meet the snow load?
No.
I
No.
know of the one.
I know of 3.
I know of one.
Yeah. A tent's not a permanent dwelling, sorry.
Well,
And they
one's
are
gone
planning
away.
on
Sorry.
living it year round.
Yeah.
Huh?
They are planning on living in it.
Yeah.
And they're homeless.
Well, dwelling, a building with one or more sections or rooms for residential use including, but not limited to, eating, cooking, sleeping, sanitary facilities, and living areas.
Right, a tent
So
doesn't
it's-
qualify for that.
Well, if you're living in it, it does.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't have different areas. It's not a building.
It can-
One or more.
It doesn't, it's not a building.
Well, wait, it is a building. We went through this.
A tent is not a building.
Tent is not a building.
Well, listen to the description, listen to the definition. A structure that provides or can provide housing, shelter, or enclosure for people, animals, vehicles, equipment, or other personal property, and which is fully enclosed and protected from the weather with one or more floors, whether finished or not, walls on all sides, and a roof. Doesn't say it's gotta be wood and 2x4s and all that.
Building code, I gave you that.
Yeah. That doesn't qualify in any building code standard. It doesn't,
Not
a tent
any.
doesn't qualify as a building. International Building Code is what a building is. A tent is not a building.
It is by the definition in this town.
I mean, I hate to,
It's certainly a structure. A combination of materials that form a construction for use, occupancy, or ornamentation with a fixed permanent location on, above, or below the surface of land.
but it's not a fixed permanent location.
Yeah.
Does it have
Tent, you
a
can pick up and
foundation?
move in 5 minutes. It's not a fixed permanent location.
True.
And it's not,
True.
and it's less than 500 square feet. Right now, minimum size for a building is 500 square feet.
Minimum size, yeah, for a home, for
For a building, for,
Not for a
For
building.
a dwelling.
Dwelling.
for a dwelling.
Do we say that?
I understand at least one of the families is homeless, but how are they gonna get through a 3-foot snowstorm?
They're not.
They're not. We have one less that we're dealing with in, well, I'm still dealing with them, but they're not living in a tent.
I guess what you could do is revise the definition of building to say a structure, comma, other than a tent, comma, that provides and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So that would be a yurt.
I was just gonna
Yeah.
say,
You just opened yourself up to
Yeah.
a bunch of things.
now we got the yurt and the tiny house.
What about containers?
Yeah, but yurts are, I've been in yurts, and they are very
It's
hospitable.
They're substantial, yeah.
Well, we have one in town that was put up without a building permit
Is that right?
and some questionable water discharges and stuff, is that correct?
Hmm.
Plus it doesn't meet the 500
Yeah.
square
Yeah.
foot.
That's gonna allow
Yeah.
issues.
It
Minimum
doesn't
building
meet the
area.
Snow load. It
Every
doesn't-
dwelling unit to be used as a single family shall have a minimum ground floor area of 500 square feet. A tent doesn't qualify. There's no way. There's just no way.
The yurt we said would, but
Maybe.
Well, yeah,
A yurt is
probably.
not flexible like a tent is flexible.
You can't just pick
So
it up
it's
in
fixed.
5 minutes.
No,
You can disassemble a yurt in a day or two maybe and move it.
but you're tearing it down. You know,
Right.
you'd be wrecking, a yurt has a wall, to my experience, similar to that wall. It's-
No, not necessarily.
It's not flexible.
Well, it's not like that though.
No, well. okay.
It's basically a canvas wall with wooden support. Most yurts.
Hmm.
It's not a structural wall with any.
In case you need it.
Okay.
Well, so modify and say a structure other than a tent or a yurt.
You know, I think we're pretty well covered with our minimum building area right now. I want to address that with tiny houses if I can get around to it. I'm trying to come up with language for tiny houses. But I don't know if I'm gonna get to it because I'm having some troubles.
do we wanna take that on tonight?
Oh, no, let's
Sure,
finish our
thanks.
assignment. We're in February.
Well, I think,
You can't living in a tent is not.
No, I agree, and I liked his suggestion. A structure, comma, but not a tent.
I don't think we need to make any changes. I mean, we can clarify it by putting something in, but I think it's pretty clear if you read through the ordinance that a tent is not a permanent dwelling.
I don't know about the tent, but the yurt, I think
That's getting close.
fits the definition.
Yeah,
No.
Hmm.
if it's 500 square feet. I don't think
And
there's,
some of them
well,
are.
But
Yeah.
there's a list of things that do not meet, I gave it to you earlier, the highlighted sections.
the
There's
7 feet, right.
There's no second egress, there's,
Right. Right, the International Building Code
no
has
proper
definitions.
windows, there's,
Right,
it's gotta meet the snow load.
Right.
It's gotta have, according to the state regulations, it has to have hot and cold running water.
right,
It has to have a shower or a bathtub.
yeah.
We say it's gotta have hot and cold running water
The
for,
state says it
Yes.
has to, and you can't go, we cannot
Right.
go
Yeah,
against the state.
You can't go,
The state building code rules.
you can't
And the
grant a
regulations.
variance, in other words.
Right.
That's what
but
you
how
said.
does, didn't, wow.
It's
Okay.
not gonna happen. Yeah,
Our building inspector goes very strictly
Mhm.
by
yeah.
the state building code.
Right,
And that's to protect the town, because if you
Right.
don't maintain the state building code and something happens, the town is gonna be liable.
right, right. Okay. And that's that.
Okay, so have we addressed residents living in permanent tents?
I don't see how that's legal.
That's
I
true.
don't know what to say to these people, it stinks. I don't envy them in their position, but I don't know what to do.
well, didn't you say that that's by definition from the state of New
Yes, they can't live there permanently. It's not a dwelling.
Right, but there's nothing specifically in the building regulations that says that, and that's what people are trying to use as a way around it.
Well, it does. There's a minimum building area for a residential building is 500 square feet.
Yeah,
Okay,
with
it's
2
not
or 3
500 square
tents
feet.
together, you've got 500 square feet. What do you do
Yeah,
then?
you can have that.
But the building code defines that you showed me.
Is there something in, that you can, a paragraph or something you guys could come up with that specifically states that unless a dwelling meets all of the state codes, it is not considered a living, a suitable dwelling for living?
We don't have something like that already?
I don't know. I haven't read them.
What's the,
Regulations.
oh, it's a dwelling.
Dwelling?
A dwelling is a building with one or more, hold on.
Sections or rooms. for
Yeah, so we have
residential use.
what's a building? A structure. Well, what's a structure? You know, that's the problem. You gotta go around circles here.
Well, I think we've got a structure.
Yeah, I know. Let's find it. Hold on.
It's,
Yeah, it's a combination of materials that form a construction for use, occupancy, or ornamentation with a fixed permanent location. Okay, so a structure requires a fixed permanent location.
Right.
All right, what does that mean in terms of a building then?
Structure.
Okay, a building is a structure.
Right,
So a building therefore has to have a fixed permanent location.
right.
And does that mean a
Right, now
foundation?
let's go back to dwelling.
Yeah,
A dwelling is a building.
yeah,
So if a building requires if a structure
Right.
requires a fixed permanent location,
right,
and a building requires a structure,
right.
and a dwelling requires a building,
Yeah,
then you require a fixed permanent location. And if
Right.
it doesn't have a fixed permanent location, you can't live there.
And does fixed mean a foundation is what I'm asking?
yes.
Is that the definition
Oh,
of
I wouldn't
fixed?
think so.
or a lot, just a lot on record.
Wait, no, fixed means you can't move it around. It's not portable.
Right, fixed permanent location.
Right. It's not portable. It's
So
not a
it has,
trailer.
so it's bound to the, well, when I say
Yeah,
foundation, I
bound
mean
to
like
the
bound
Bound
to
to
the
your
earth.
ground.
Right. You don't necessarily
Okay.
mean it's 8-foot deep concrete. It could be pilings. It could be.
Okay.
Right,
Okay, but does it have to be in the ground, anchored into the ground?
anchored
Right.
to
And the reason I ask that is that there's a structure that actually has concrete braces, I guess you'd call them. They're sitting on the ground and the 4x4 goes down into it.
right.
Our building inspector about had heart failure because he said that's absolutely not up to code at all.
Right. Right, you can
So
use those,
that's not considered fixed permanent.
right, you can use those things for a deck, but not a foundation for a building.
Right.
Those little concrete pads that Home Depot sells.
But a deck is part of a structure. A
Right.
deck is a structure,
Yeah.
and a building is a structure.
Yeah.
And I believe that our building inspector requires you to do like sonotubes to put your posts
Right,
in
it's
and
gotta be
stuff on your
frostproof.
deck, and so you can't just use those.
Right, it's gonna be
concrete
frostproof.
decks.
Right,
So,
right.
I think anything that's not a fixed permanent structure cannot be used as a residence.
Right.
Do you want me to talk to him? Or-
Does any of this have anything to do with the lot that the tent rests on? If, you know, the homeless thing is terrible to begin with, it's very difficult. But if someone were to pitch a tent on just a lot, someone owns that lot.
Right,
That lot is owned by someone.
right.
Does that individual have permission from the lot owner to erect a tent?
Mm-hmm.
mhm.
And if not, then it's
But then it
pretty,
becomes a civil matter because that's trespassing.
Right,
Okay.
Sure.
right, that's
But
trespassing, right.
well, that's
our
right.
thing
That's-
is the.
So it's gonna take care of
tent.
itself in that case.
No, I mean, if.
I'm assuming these people on the 10 own the land. I don't know otherwise. I'm gonna make the assumption that they own the land.
Or
One
have
of them
permission,
have
permission from the landowner.
I'll make
One
that
that I
assumption.
know of, they're on the relative's land.
Yeah,
But
so-
it's family.
So that's not the issue.
No.
We're not trespassing, so that's not the issue.
The issue is they should not be living in a tent, especially this time of year.
Right,
But if they're on relative's land, do they go into the house? I mean, a relative's property, do they?
right. Do
do
they
they
shower
sort of
and
move
bathe
back
and
and
eat?
forth?
I honestly don't know. I know they have extension cords and all kinds of stuff to the tent.
Right.
And they do, yeah.
We'll get 'em.
But the tent is still where they're sleeping, where they're hanging out. I mean, if we get a big snowstorm and they're not quick enough, that tent's coming down. It's
Right.
not meant to hold a snow load. Those rods aren't gonna hold any kind of weight.
DES, or not DES, but the state of New Hampshire must have regulations around that.
I don't know.
Snow loads, that's certainly.
Well, yes, snow load is in the building code
Yeah.
Right.
that he follows.
I mean,
Plus it says, you know, in the building code, you've got to have the hot and cold running water, you've got to have a bathroom facility within the building. You know, a tent doesn't meet those.
right.
Right.
So you can't permanently live in a tent. It
Right.
can't be a permanent resident.
So what is the question in front of John? Why is he hesitant here?
Because
Strikes me
it's
as
not
that-
specifically spelled out.
I don't see how it's not.
Yeah.
It has to be 500 square feet, it has to be permanently affixed to the ground, has to have plumbing and heating and hot water and all the things you just listed. A tent doesn't fit those definitions. What's his problem?
His problem is that people are arguing with him constantly. And he's figuring that if we could make it a little bit more black and white.
Well,
Then-
buildings, I'm looking at his building regulations. Paragraph 7I, minimum building area. Every dwelling unit to be used as a single family shall have minimum ground floor area, 5 square feet. Bam. I mean, yeah, you can technically tie a bunch of tents together to make that.
And the whole
When
sewage and.
water supply and public sewage is required. Tents don't have that. No matter what you do, the tent doesn't have that. So those two things rule out a tent. I don't see any other language needed.
Right.
I really don't.
500 square feet has to be permanently affixed
Right.
and has to conform to wastewater requirements.
Right.
Those three would seem to rule out a tent.
Yeah. No building or structure.
Right.
If a tent is a structure, then it has to abide by these building standards and abide by the International Building Code. Tent doesn't do that at all. Clearly, right?
Yep.
So
Seems to me that gives him the
I
authority.
think that gives him, that's 3 ways he has the authority.
Okay.
Tent is not a building. In order to live, you have to have a dwelling unit
Mhm.
and have to be 500 square feet, water and sewage and electricity, and follow IBC. So, now I'm gonna have a heck of a time writing a paragraph that violates all those rules.
Even if those people have the permission of the landowner to be there.
Right. They can't live
It's
there
not
permanently.
safe.
No.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but
And
so is-
one of the homeless situations involves children,
Yeah.
yeah, that's,
Yeah.
and it's definitely not safe.
Yeah.
Are we thinking of the same one? It's 2 adults down this way?
Yeah, there's two. There's that one's taken care of.
Oh, is it?
Is that the one across from the school?
Yeah,
No,
Yeah,
no.
across from the school.
Oh, no.
That's the one I'm talking
That's another one.
No, that's,
All right,
that's
anyway,
taken
let's
care
not
of.
go there.
I know.
Let's not go there off camera.
Okay,
I don't wanna do that.
all right, let's,
I don't wanna go there.
No.
okay, so are we doing woodlots next or the Marion?
Okay, so, before we move on, the building inspector's 2 changes to the zoning ordinance, right? We agree on those, correct?
Let me just ask, the Part E, new buildings built according to New Hampshire DES standards?
Yeah.
Not to be argumentative, but
You already have it, doesn't it?
we're making a lot of changes, and it's, to me, changes should be really warranted and needed. I don't see any difference between the current wording and the new wording. That's very significant.
For which one?
E, section 6E, page 33. The one that heads all buildings built according to New Hampshire DES standards. If you look at old text and new text, to me it says exactly the same thing. He just takes out Department of Health and Human Services. I think that's the only change.
All lines, places of business,
Takes out
sanitary systems,
the DES.
shall be
Yeah.
constructed,
But then
and
maintain
maintained to,
to DES standards. Now it says, in accordance with standards set forth and enforced by New Hampshire Health and Human Services, DES.
No, Department of Health and Services, Water Supply and Pollution Control Commission, and by the town of New Durham. And they have to maintain
Yeah, he's
DES
deleting the
standards.
DES routine.
He's deleting the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services.
Why?
That's my, that's, wait,
It says they're enforced by, and they are.
maybe I just don't understand this.
Yeah, he deletes the New Hampshire Department
And
of
maintained
Environmental Services.
in accordance with this, the original says, in accordance with standards set forth and enforced by New Hampshire Health and Human Services, DES. He says to DES standards and enforced by Health and Human Services, but isn't DES part of Health and Human Services?
No,
no,
No, that's a separate.
that's the Department of
different department.
Environmental Services,
They're different?
yes. Health and Human Services is,
yeah, it's a different
state
department.
welfare, food stamps, child care, child protection. DES is environmental, which is your septic system approvals, wetland permits.
Well, doesn't it, doesn't it seem odd that DES standards would be enforced by Health and Human Services, or Health and Services?
Yeah.
No, because if DES standards are not enforced by Health and Human Services and the family is living someplace and the septic is bad, that would tie up Health and Human Services' hands from being able to come and remove any children that might be in a unhealthy situation. And he's not asking
I'm
you
not-
to take that out.
I'm just not clear on what the problem is and how the new
Yeah.
language fixes the problem, that's all.
Yeah, I'm not, in a way, I'm not seeing it either.
Well, we can leave it in.
I mean,
I don't know
if,
what the
if,
original
if there's
Set
a,
forth.
if there's genuinely a problem that the new language fixes, then fine. I don't understand what the problem is and how this fixes it, that's all.
It doesn't change anything?
And
I can't see any significant change there. It does change it. This says it's.
what I would change from the original language is I would only change a little bit. Did everyone have the original language? Probably
No.
not.
Maybe copies.
Yeah, no, I've got it.
Can you two share with Dot? Can you, Jeff, can you show, Freeland the original
I
language?
got it right here.
Yeah, you
Oh, okay,
found
he's
it.
got original language. Third line, New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, comma, New Hampshire Water Supply and Pollution Control Commission, comma, and the town of Durham. It's just the way that is by the water supply, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I
That's the
assume,
only thing, the only change I really need.
I assume what it's trying to say, you're right, is that it is the Water Supply and Pollution Control Commission of the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services that they're trying to say, and they don't say it properly.
Right, yeah. I'm not sure where that falls in the, I'm just gonna let each one of the different departments be part of enforcement.
Okay.
So
The
you wanna-
DES isn't usually part of that enforcement.
They're the
Well,
ones that set the
But it says in
standard.
accordance with
They
standards set
approve the
forth,
system and everything, but.
DES sets the standards.
Mhm.
So
And
that's
everybody else
what the
will
language
listen.
says though. Maintained in accordance with standards set forth and enforced by. All those lists of those 3 different departments do one or both of those things.
Right, right.
So
Right.
they're all part of that equation.
So he's just really clarifying by saying the DES, the standards
Sets the
set
standards.
forth by the Department of
Yeah.
Environmental Sciences and enforced by.
Yeah. Should we,
I mean, it does
delineate
make
that
it-
out?
it
Should we
does.
separate that out?
Does make it clearer. I don't know. I can see where.
But doesn't Health and Human Services and the Water Supply Control Commission don't have any
they don't set
standards? They don't,
And DES has enforcement capability, I thought.
I don't know too.
They have field agents that come out and check
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, that's why I'm not,
They're not strictly standards and no enforcement.
I guess I'm loath to argue with John. He knows so much more about it than I do.
yeah.
So.
What do you think,
Well,
Glenn?
we just have John come in if we can,
I
right?
thought of that too. I
We're
think
taking too much time on this.
Yeah,
That's a
I
good,
mean,
good idea. Let's have him
I mean,
explain
or he
it.
can, yeah,
yeah,
I mean, he can do it by phone if we have to.
right,
I thought the same thing after talking to
yeah.
Yeah, rather than try to read his mind.
Okay,
have
let's
him-
move on from there then.
Okay.
Well,
So let's
Okay.
ask John.
Good idea. Why didn't you say that before?
I should have said it.
Person there.
I
So
should've
can you
said
contact him and see when he can come
Yeah.
next Tuesday?
Next Tuesday?
Well, whatever
Next meeting.
whatever meeting he can, sooner the better. Because we do want to get this done.
Jeff, is our next meeting December 4th?
Yeah, either the first or the third. Okay, so that's Rod.
Yep.
Who wants to go next, Jeff or Bob? Doesn't matter to me.
I'll go.
All right.
Let's do what I hope is the easier of my two, which is the Mary Meeting watershed.
Okay.
Turns out there's only 3 things that we did, well, there's only 2 things we did not address from Attorney Sager's letter.
Okay.
My impression had been that there were half a dozen things we had to do this year, but it turned out most of them we had already done. So the first one is just take out the word lake in the title, and I'm sure that was my fault, I think that's how I gave it to you. But it's the Mary Meeting Watershed Overlay District, not Mary Meeting Lake.
Okay.
That's minor.
Okay.
The second question from Attorney Sager is, hang on one second. Okay, there's another typo.
Yeah, they're
Here, I think.
bottom of the first page, maps.
That's where I'm at, but before we get there, I just saw a typo. Under preservation of open lands through conservation, there's
Yeah.
one means of protecting the Mary Meeting, and it's now M-E-N-Y.
Right.
It used to be R-R-Y. Okay. B, district boundary. He had a problem with the maps, and what he said was, it wouldn't be proper unless we refer to the official town map. I don't know how to do that because we have our own map, and I thought our map pretty clearly delineates. This is the one that Bob worked with
Right.
Stratford. It's
Right.
Stratford County. Worked with Stratford, and we got a map. So I don't know what else we need to do, but he had made a comment. It needs to be. Let me read it.
Well, there is one single official town map. It has
Right.
like all the important. It has all the different zoning zoning boundaries in it, zones in it. It's got the town use district,
Oh,
town's
Yeah,
mixed use district versus the residential
We have a
district.
map of each of the overlay districts, and that's what he's saying, is you need a specific,
yeah, he said I
a
know.
map that shows the specific Mary Meeting
Okay.
district.
He
Right.
said I note the town adopted an official map to delineate the boundaries of zoning districts, but this district boundary section does not reference the official map, but rather other maps. I feel it is legal error to fail to either, one, delineate the boundaries with specific distances and points, or two, delineate the boundaries with specific reference to the official map.
Yeah.
How do we do that? Is that map electronic? I mean,
Well, yeah,
do
what
we
is,
need to-
what did we call that map? The one that Bob came up with that has the,
We didn't even include it in the ordinance.
Well,
We
then
didn't attach the
then that's what we're
map
gonna
to
do.
it.
Oh, I thought that was attached.
Does it say that specifically in this ordinance?
Oh, I-
See attached map?
Is,
Let's see,
yeah.
it says
Specific map.
detached maps.
Applicable to the Mary Meeting watershed which lies in blah, blah, blah. The watershed incorporates, but not limited to, the limits are delineated in a topographic map posted on the town's website and also available from the land use office. It is incorporated into this ordinance by reference and shown on the attached map.
Then I agree with you, we need an official town map. That's
Right.
not an official town map. That's
Right.
something that he pulled offline.
Right.
You need to have, like Stratford County Regional, make you up a map of the Marine Meeting overlay district,
Right.
just like we have for conservation,
Right.
steep slopes,
Well, we did
everything.
do that. That's what you
That's
did.
not
No, that's not what he
it wasn't, Stratford County didn't do it, Bob did it on his own.
Oh,
They'll use the same data, but.
Right.
that was
But we need to give it,
something that I did.
all right. So we need to get an official map from Stratford County.
yeah,
did. Right.
we'll have to
Regional
contract with them to make that map.
Okay, and how does that happen? Is that something that goes through you, or how do
Yeah.
we do that?
Yeah,
I guess so.
yeah, you would, because you
Right.
have all the points, the topo points that you use to draw
Yeah,
that map,
that's
right?
readily available information.
Right, but you just need to give them the list of what the points were or something.
Oh, no,
Or
they
tell,
just-
or just tell them.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
they'll just click on Mare Meeting Lake and they'll develop
Watershed
the
zone.
watershed. Yeah.
Right, and the heights of land identify
And
the,
they have digital elevation models,
Right.
which are the topography, basically,
okay.
Okay,
elevations.
Okay, so we'll add that to our set of 9 maps that we have,
Yeah.
make it 10.
right,
Okay,
Okay.
Okay.
I will send an email,
yeah, okay.
and probably after the holidays, because next week is hopefully gonna be tax bills.
Will we have that by the public hearing?
I don't know if you'll have it that quick,
Right, we'll see.
because that's not gonna be under my control. I can send them an email and let them know what we're looking for, but when they get it made is totally up to them, not us.
Is there a cost? to
Yes.
Oh, yeah, there'll be a fee.
that? Is that gonna have to be approved by anyone, or can you just do it?
We have funds in our budget for consultation and contracting,
Good.
so,
I will look at your budget
Yeah,
and
just
see what you
figure out
have, and if anything, if you have the money in this year's budget, and you know what the bill is gonna be, but it's not gonna be due to January, you can always encumber the funds.
right.
I thought we still had 3,000 something in the budget that was
I
unspent.
don't know offhand how much there is, so we'll have to figure that out.
Okay, all right, but
We'll just have to
that's
Get
the
them to
process.
define it, give us a contract, and we'll figure if we have money or not.
So nothing needs to be changed in the wording of the ordinance, correct? We just need to develop the map as as an official town map.
Hold on, Rising Bridge Measurement District, Steep Slopes Overlay District, River and Commerce Seas, Conservation Overlay District.
We've got those.
Right, I'm trying to, I want to get a description here that says this is, the map is called, you know? I want to define the name of the map, is what I want to do. Limits,
By
the last sentence,
map.
three lines from the bottom. The
Yep.
limits of the watershed are delineated in a topographic map, comma, Mary Meeting Watershed Overlay District map, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, why don't we say, all
Why
right,
we
why
need
don't
to
we,
just define it?
yeah, why don't we add language that just says, in a map titled,
Yep,
in a topographic map titled
Mary Meeting,
Mary Meeting Watershed Overlay District Map. Do we need to be any fancier than that?
Yep. Yeah. Yep, posted on the town's website and
Please
also
take
available
that
from the
out.
land use office, period.
Please take that out. I can't keep, sometimes I can't keep up with these maps, and if I don't get PDFs and we can't figure out how to manipulate them on that website, you don't have any of your newer maps on that website yet.
So it's not posted on the town website?
Nope.
Delineated in a topographic map that is available from the town, from land use office,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay,
I mean, it will end up on the website,
Right.
but by putting it in there, it's
It has
not
to be there
there.
now.
Right, and it's not.
Okay, so, all right, talk to me,
so
write a note, talk to me about what the problem with that is. Talk to me later, make an appointment. You know, I'll come in after hours and we'll talk about it and fix that.
So it'll now read delineated in a topographic map titled Mary Meeting Watershed Overlay District Map that is available from the land use office.
Yes.
Okay.
You
Okay.
want the word map a second time?
Well, I agree, it is redundant, but
Because I don't think they label them map, it'll just say Mary Meeting Overlay District.
Right, okay,
I don't think it has the word map.
right, okay. Okay,
Jeff, do you?
so we don't need the last sentence, right? It is incorporated, we don't need that.
No.
okay, we'll just take out the entire last sentence.
Okay,
And did you strike the two lakes from Mary Meeting Lake Watershed?
I,
One in the first sentence and one in the second sentence of the third paragraph?
No, those have to get straight.
yep, all right, let's take those out too.
yeah,
Okay, and then the last one from Attorney Sager,
yeah,
I think we went back and forth on this last year, but C6.
yep.
Only indirect and shielded outdoor lighting shall be used, flood lighting is not permitted. I think what we're trying to do is just minimize outdoor lighting, you know,
Right.
mercury vapor lamps and such.
Well, do you have don't we have a lighting ordinance?
Yeah,
We have a dark sky
yeah,
ordinance
dark
anyway,
sky ordinance.
right?
And I thought you guys had agreed to take that one out anyways.
Okay, we didn't, I can't remember what the outcome of the discussion was. But there is a dark sky ordinance, you think, that already
Yeah,
covers
why don't we
this?
just say that, only indirect and shielded outdoor lighting shall be used in accordance with the dark sky ordinance.
We don't have dark.
I thought we did.
We never formalized.
We never
that.
formalized that. Oh, okay, sorry. I misunderstood.
I think we had a problem with
Do we have-
limits.
I thought there was something in there about it.
We spent a lot of time on it.
We did.
Your light was not supposed
Um,
to transgress boundaries.
We do have something under open space conservation. It says, ensure lighting is not excessive to inhibit the rural bright stars, dark sky nightscape. We could borrow that same language and see if there's anything else. There's another one, design standards, what is this under? Again, under open
I
space.
mean, the dark sky.
Open space also says, street and neighborhood lighting shall be low intensity
Right,
and fully screened to maintain a dark sky.
right.
Either of those, I think, is, those are more enforceable and more specific, I think.
We could just, I mean, we could use, well, we just use the same language.
Well, that's what I was saying, which
Yeah,
one
street-
do we like better?
Shall be low intensity, fully screened, maintain a dark sky.
That to me, that's the intent here. Street and
Only
neighborhood-
indirect and shielded outdoor lighting. That, and we go back to that.
Yeah, how about just
That,
change it to street and neighborhood lighting shall be low intensity and fully screened to maintain a dark sky.
Yeah.
If that was
I
acceptable
think the
for
first
open,
one works better than the street light one.
Only.
all right, well here, the first one is, ensuring lighting is not excessive to inhibit the rural bright stars, dark sky nightscape. I like that, but I think that's pretty vague.
Yeah. Indirect and shielded.
Whereas the second one is, to me, is a little more strict, still not completely
But for
warranted.
the area that you're talking about, you're really not gonna have a lot of street lights.
No.
You would if somebody built a.
What we just, only indirect,
220 houses like was proposed.
But that's not gonna happen.
We say a lot of things are not gonna happen,
Right.
and they do. I
what we just do,
rule that out.
only indirect and shielded outdoor lighting shall be used in order to maintain a dark sky. About that,
Okay, that's good.
all right? You get rid of floodlighting in order,
Shall be used in order to maintain a dark sky. Okay?
okay?
With that-
Okay,
with
and
that
number
works.
4, strike another lake there.
Oh, God, I did it again. Yep, number 4.
Okay.
What?
Thank you. Another lake.
Lake, number 4, yeah.
I'm so used to writing Irrigated Lake, it's just habit.
And number 4 on that same page.
Okay.
Lake.
I will,
Strike through.
I will collate all those changes, Scott, and get them to you.
Okay, so is that done?
So we're done with that.
Make a motion?
I make a motion that we move the changes to the winter meeting watershed ordinance to public hearing.
Okay. Second? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Alright.
5-0. Okay,
And,
And now my very favorite.
look, you wanna do trailers?
yeah, let's go with trailers and such.
Did we give out my trailer suggestions? I don't think I saw it.
The new draft, I don't think we
No,
have
I
that.
might have missed that one.
I sent it out, and frankly, I didn't make a
You
hard
have one copy?
I did not.
Okay.
In fact, I gotta pull up mine.
Can I keep this?
I don't know if I'm having- Trailer regs, right? The most recent one. It starts with section 6, right? General provisions, Jeff?
The trailers?
Yeah,
Let me
is that what, down the top of the page? New section
Yes,
10?
yes, yes,
Right?
yes, it
All
says
right, I
section
have
6.
a copy.
Yep, and,
It's just one page?
yes, proposed new section K.
Yep.
So while we're making copies, let me just describe some of the thinking here, and then we can.
You find it, Laura?
Not yet.
On the 14th, I think it was sent out
Yep,
from Jeff, RV trailer regs.
You sent it around?
I did.
Yeah, consider me-
Yeah, no, I sent it to
Didn't
everyone.
send it to Laura.
I did.
You did not send it to Laura.
No, she's CC'd.
You see it?
I don't remember seeing it.
I don't see it.
I'm almost dead, so I don't know.
Oh, yeah, CC, oh, never mind.
Yeah, no, she's under CC.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, whether it didn't get to you for some reason, I just sent it again.
Oh, yes, yeah, I did read that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So first, I'm proposing that we delete the section under the shorefront conservation overlay district so that we don't have two ordinances on trailers and RVs. But I have incorporated all of the language that was in that overlay district into what I propose as a new section.
Okay.
And I propose that we place that new section under section 6, which is, go back here, section 6. Section 6 is general provisions, use regulations for town of New Durham.
Yeah.
Seemed to me to be the right place, but I don't claim to have that knowledge. But that seems like where it belongs. And the current section ends at J, so I propose a section K to that section. Titled Storage of Recreational Vehicles, Recreational Trailers, and abbreviated RVs.
Yeah.
And I used recreational vehicles, recreational trailers, because that's how we define it
Right.
already in the ordinance. And just to go through the list, but we can just debate it here in a moment when you all get a copy of it, you can see
Yeah.
it. Starting with the number of RVs, there we go. Thank you. This is what we had discussed last time, and I didn't think there was objections, but let's go through it all again. 1 RV on lots of less than 1 acre. 2 if it's over 1 but less than 3. If it's over 3 acres, we're silent. But only 1 RV lot in the Shorefront Conservation Overlay District, which is 250 feet of a water body.
So the way I read it, if you own more than 3 acres, you can have as many RVs
We
on
would
your
not-
land as you want?
We would not regulate the number of RVs or trailers that you park there. That's correct.
Seriously?
Wow.
Somebody up on the ridge has a 5-acre piece and they can put 20 RVs on it?
Well, they could today. You couldn't say no. I don't know. Do we want to cap the number?
RV.
I mean, these sizes I came up with kind of arbitrarily.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like when I try to be restrictive, people always say, you can't tell people you can't do that. So I'm not restrictive, and you guys say you can't let them do that.
Well, they have to meet the setbacks.
Right, must meet all setback
No
requirements.
business conducted within a parked or stored.
If
living
somebody had a
quarters,
10-acre
does that mean
piece
could
and
be
they
rented?
moved 20 feet in from the road and 15 feet from each sideline and put 30 trailers, they would meet the setback.
But would you put 30 trailers only if you were renting them out? It was like a business.
Well,
You
yes,
know,
well, that's the
huge
thing.
family reunion for a month or whatever. Yeah, I mean, it could be anything. It could be a commune if they wanted it to be.
Well, yeah, it has to be owned or non-paying guests of the landowner.
Okay,
So
so
you
they
can't
put all
park all
those
your-
trailers and have their own little commune.
For a certain length of time.
Do you have something in the regulations where they have to be registered and mobile?
Yes, yes.
Well, that would,
And that's there, well, that's already in the shorefront, but I'd like to put it town-wide. So
Right.
it would say,
Right.
must
Just-
be fully licensed and ready for highway use,
yep.
75 feet from the normal high water level of a water body, unhooked from all water or sewer lines when not in use, parked in, and this is from the old regs, parked in compliance with the town ordinance regulating the obstruction of Class 5 roads.
Mhm.
So meet all setbacks, no living quarters or business. I said exceptions shall include the use of an RV for living space during construction of a home, and again arbitrarily 6 months, because that's what we allow them for in the summertime.
Maximum period.
But again, I don't know if that's the right language for sure or not. Must be the personal property of the owner or non-paying guests thereof, and again, that's old language. And then, we talked about, well, if you do have one and you want to park it on your property and you want to camp there in the summertime, that is reasonable.
Yeah.
So I said a maximum, instead of 6 nights, which we currently have, but only in the shorefront,
Right.
I changed it to a maximum period of 14 nights per calendar month without a permit
Right.
for the summer season, May to October, with a permit from the code enforcement.
Right.
Okay.
That was a burden on him to figure out what's
Right.
a permit
Where,
mean, but-
that's where you guys are gonna have to do something in the building regulations to give him something that he can go by. You can't, that's putting a lot on him that he's gotta interpret for himself without you giving him any kind of guidance.
What I didn't put in here was all the language we had talked about a septic. Does it
Right.
constitute like 1 bedroom on your septic plan
Right.
or whatever?
Right.
But I wasn't sure if it belongs here or is that a building
That's
regulation?
that's going to be a building regulation and part of that permit.
Okay.
So I guess we're going to.
I will invite John to come to the December meeting if
Yeah.
you wanna have this on the agenda.
Yeah.
And have him go over this with you so that you can help write that into the building regulations.
Right, and then you can we'll have to come up with a permit. Also.
Right, and a fee that you want to charge.
Yep.
Well, a fee that, selectmen set the fees though, don't they?
Right, we can recommend them.
You can make a recommendation and it goes to the selectmen.
Yeah. Okay.
Nora, my sense is you'd like to see some limit on an acreage. Do you want to say between 3 and 10 acres? You think if there's a 10-acre parcel that it should be, you'd like to see it.
I'm just
get into
saying that that's
numbers.
leaving it pretty
Pretty
open.
open.
It's-
And there are
becomes
people who
something.
would take advantage of that.
Do we want to declare a limit no matter what?
I mean,
the lot size
is one person really going to own 10 RVs? How is one
What'd you say,
homeowner, the owner of the lot, going to own 10 RVs?
So
Unless
if
he's
you
a
put
dealer.
10 acres, you could put 10 RVs on it.
Right. That's what I'm trying to figure. That's a business.
Do we have something in our ordinances or regulations anywhere that say that you're only allowed so many registered vehicles? Are you limited?
There are some parking regulations.
Because
Jump
then
on
that
lots.
would affect that as well. If
Right.
they all have to be registered and you only allow like 4 registered vehicles per,
No,
household
they're
or
just
whatever it
parking
is.
limits. Isn't there parking limits?
Well, multi-family dwellings, I know
Right.
there's one there, and you can't have a junk vehicle, you can't have unregistered vehicles in your yard
Right.
for a period of time. I don't know, is there a
I don't
limit
know
on
if
the
there's a
number of
limit on
registered
registered
cars?
vehicles. I have no idea.
No, I
How
don't think
could
there
you, when
is.
someone owns a dump truck, 2 pickup trucks?
Trucks and an excavator and a
Exactly,
farm tractor, yeah. And the kids all own cars.
yeah.
For multi-family dwellings, 2 vehicle spaces per
Right.
dwelling unit.
Right.
Yeah, for multi-families.
But I don't know that we have anything for single family.
I don't think you do, because I don't
No.
think you can limit how many registered vehicles a
Yeah,
person can
yeah.
have.
No.
John was saying he's getting a lot of complaints on the leisure on of yards and space where there's multiple vehicles that are unregistered.
Junk yards.
Junkets.
They hide them in the summertime, and the
Yeah.
leaves fall off the trees, and everybody can see them, and it becomes an issue.
Apparently we have parking standards in the site plan review and/or subdivision regulations of the town of New Durham. That's for the town center. Yeah, I call what you're referring to New Hampshire landscaping.
Yeah.
A couple old snowmobiles, a washing machine.
Yeah. Did you ever read The Beans from Egypt?
Oh, I
Maine?
did.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
I know them. They're my
They
neighbors.
were your neighbors.
I've boyfriend lives in Warren, and you can do pretty much whatever you want there. There's no zoning ordinances, there's no building inspector, there's no regulations.
Well, we had the problem.
They
right
follow
down
the
street
state code only.
Until it burned down.
The state doesn't come and do inspections very often.
But we do have nuisance regulations, no?
We must.
I thought
You
we
do,
had-
and you have a junkie yard, and you
Yeah.
have,
We have some kind of nuisance regulations, I thought.
we do.
Anyway, that's off
Well,
topic.
anyway, how many RVs can you put on a 10-acre lot?
Right. Do we want to restrict above 3 acres? Dot had a suggestion of maximum 1 per acre. Does that make more sense? Because it still means 20 acres can put in 20 RVs.
But they all have to be registered,
And 20 acres is.
Yes.
and they have to be the owners. They can't just be their friends
For
parking.
owners or non-paying guests.
Or not being, yeah, well, yeah, see, that opens it up there
It
too.
does. It does. You can't tell people that you can't let your friends park their RV on your land. That's for sure. But yes, the fact that they all have to be street-worthy, road-worthy, and registered minimizes the parking hazard to some extent.
Well, then do you want to say for more than 2 RVs, the limit is 1 per 3 acres of land? I mean, they can have 2 RVs on the first 1 to 3 acres,
Right?
and then that leaves them 17 acres, which would allow them 6 more.
1 RV per 3 acres for lot sizes greater than 3 acres.
Right, yeah. I mean, figure the density.
What if you made, they had to get a permit? Anything over 2 RVs or 3 RVs, you are required to get a permit from the town to, show just reason, so we don't end up with 20 campers on an acre lot.
Well, John would be the one issuing the permit, so that's a judgment call on his part then? Okay, and do you feel he'd be comfortable with that? Because he seems to want things
That would be
delineated.
something that you guys could ask him at the December meeting, how he would feel about it becoming a permit issue.
Okay.
I mean, that's just a suggestion.
I'm sorry, Laura, say that again. I was looking this up.
Should say more than 3 RVs would be by permit only.
Ah,
So
so
that-
now we gotta put regulations around that.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but that's what she said, ask John.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's ask him about that. Let's just ask him about that when he's here.
Okay.
Because we're gonna need a permit for sleeping accommodations anyway.
Mhm.
So we can have that a different part of the permit. Is this permit for sleeping, or is this permit for more than 3 RVs on one lot? Two
Exactly.
parts to the permit.
And what do you do about the septic and water and
That's
everything else
part
for
of
all
the
these
permit.
RVs?
You need to figure all that out.
Yeah.
We'll have to put limits on that. I don't know how you're gonna limit. I mean, you can put some limits, but you can't.
Yeah, I know.
A big RV may be able to sleep 10 people, but it only has 1 bathroom in it, right?
Mhm.
So I don't see how you can, regardless of the size of RV, I don't think we're gonna be able to say it's more than 1 bedroom.
Oh, for the building
For the
code?
side, yeah, for the building, if you have a lot, it's
we
the septic
should-
can handle 3 bedrooms, there are 2 in the house, therefore you can plug 1
You get
RV
1 more
and
for
you're
your
done.
RV.
You might be able to find out more about that if you go to someone who has a campground. They have septic systems that are big enough for everyone to empty.
Yeah, those are huge septic systems. Those septic systems are designed for 50.
But they might have, when they get their system, it might say each RV is considered this size, this is the size tank you're gonna need in order to accommodate this number of sites for this many days.
Like the church.
I'm just saying, they might have.
Yeah, they may have
something-
adopted
There might be some kind of
maybe
guideline,
guidelines at least
Yeah,
to give us a
something
ballpark.
to give you a ballpark.
Yeah, maybe. who
Okay.
knows someone who owns, owns a campground.
Well, isn't there one right up in Alton, but was it the
Yeah.
Turtle
There's
Crossing?
two or
Turtle
three.
Crawl or something?
There's 2 or 3 in Alton, there's one in, I think there's one in Rochester, a ways, I
Rochester,
can't
yeah.
think of where it is, or maybe it's gone, I'm not sure, but it's out that way somewhere.
Well, you're in the Alton Town
There's one in
Hall.
Barnstead.
Are there any, is there any official documentation there about correlating the number of RVs allowed in the Turtle Crossing to the size of their septic facility?
I don't know, but I can look tomorrow.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to look it up? Okay, good.
Okay, and we want to table finalizing this until we
Yeah.
can sit with John? Is there anything else here that other members of the board find objectionable or don't like? Or
No, I
wanna
think you
change?
basically translated everything that was in the shorefront conservation. I think you translated it all pretty well in here.
Yeah, it's all included one way or another,
Right.
and I changed it from 6 nights to 14 nights, but personally, I think that's fair. If you own an RV and you want to use it in
Yeah.
the summertime.
You should be able to have at least a couple of weeks that you can come camp, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, without being too onerous.
Exactly.
Right.
So, okay, those were mine.
Okay, I'll see what I can find out about the septic requirements at a campground.
Okay.
Next. Must be woodlots.
Yeah, I think we're
This one's my favorite.
up to the lots,
Have you
right?
been avoiding this?
Okay, you're up, Bob.
Alright, so at the last meeting, we had talked about some things to move around in this draft, and then to add some language for removing woodlot status to convert parcel into a building lot versus to merge lots. So we still need some work, but anyway, there's a start. So I'm just going through here, starting off under section, if you have it before you have it.
Yeah.
So section C4, they're not designated as woodlots or agricultural lots. Probably can get rid of as defined in the definition section. But I did add a definition, which is on the last page. Just for starters, and certainly subject to
Yeah.
revisions. The zoning ordinance was enacted in 1983. I didn't double check the
Yeah.
date, but I believe it was town meeting 1983. when
Okay.
Woodlot status was initiated. And then if this goes to the voters, it would cease to exist in 2018.
Is it always true that woodlots do not meet minimum standards as a residential lot? And I'm thinking about, you have mentioned several times North Shore Road. I think those back lots could be a
Yeah.
buildable lot.
Yeah, they aren't
Maybe
necessarily,
they-
woodlot is not necessarily non-conforming lot.
Unbuildable.
It's not necessarily non-conforming. It can be, but it's not necessarily.
I don't, some may actually, well, they didn't go through the formal process of review that we do now, so.
No, they're
but
not.
they may now have the frontage. When they were created, I don't think they did. I don't think.
But you can create a woodlot with adequate frontage.
You could.
Right, that's
In
my
fact,
point.
that's-
That's I think Jeff's point.
and
There
that's-
may be woodlots that
Well,
are
that-
conforming lots.
Actually, a prime example of that was Penny Lane. But they didn't go through the full subdivision review
Right,
to turn it into a building lot. They asked for all sorts of waivers, so they had the frontage.
right,
But they had steep slopes and a whole myriad
Right.
of never delineated wetlands. But
right.
you are right.
So calling it a non-conforming lot might not be accurate, right?
Right, yeah.
Is that,
I think this is not
is not a residential lot,
True,
is
formally
what it isn't.
designated lots
right?
do not meet the minimum standards for designation as a residential lot. I think you could just revise this,
Uh-huh.
Bob. Houses and camps are expressly forbidden on lots designated as woodlots or agricultural lots.
except when you're working the land, except when you're doing logging, right? So you need to include that single circumstance.
Right.
You can put a camper on a woodlot while you're working the land.
Right.
So
You can't build
you
a
don't-
camp, but you can have a
Well,
camp.
no, houses, but houses and camps.
Not houses.
No,
Houses and-
Camps. Well, a camp means a building, a structure,
Not
right?
necessarily. I don't think that's how the language is.
I thought of that, I thought trailers are
then
allowed.
instead of putting houses and
It's only
camps,
our
you're putting up
desert-
structures.
It's-
Well, section D has,
I think
it's been modified ever so slightly, from the original language.
Yeah. Right.
I think houses and camps is accurate.
Would you want to use the word cabins instead of
Because
camp?
trailers
No,
are,
Well, let's look up to see if we've got.
No dwellings are permitted on such lots.
Yep.
But campers and camp trailers may be present for a period no longer than 60 days when the land is in active use. That's always been in our language about what a woodlot is.
Yep.
No, dwellings are permitted. I will put that part in the definition, the bottom 2 sentences.
Yeah, because the only place we use the
Bottom
term
sentence.
camps
No dwelling.
is under woodlots.
Yeah.
We don't define dwellings as camps or camps as dwellings anywhere else.
Yeah.
Okay, so definition has been revised to,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not necessarily non-conforming.
So we say non-residential lot
Okay.
created
Yeah,
between
yeah.
1983 and 18, right?
yeah,
That could be used for sustainable forestry, agricultural practices. Woodlots do not meet minimum standards. And then strike the existing last sentence and replace it with the one from paragraph D. No dwellings are permitted on such lots, but campers and camp trailers may be present for a period no longer than 60 days when the land is in active use. Right? That's a good definition.
And it's a minor change, but a residential lot created between 1983 and
Non-residential.
Non-residential.
Non-residential lot, sorry. A non-residential lot created between 83 and 2018 that can be used, because this says it could be used, but if you own a woodlot today, you can still use it.
yep, yep.
So that can
Right.
be used.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, Bob, back to part D.
Yes.
Woodlots or agricultural lots. Should we state overtly no new woodlots may be created after 2018 or?
I think we probably should.
State that in some overt way.
I
Because
think we should.
again, I'm thinking 10 years down the road, we're all gone.
Right.
Somebody comes in and says, I got 100 acres and I want to make it into woodlots.
Yeah. I think we should say that overtly. If that's what we want to do.
Yeah,
If that's our intent. I spoke to someone yesterday who doesn't think we should get rid of woodlots.
why? Because.
Because they do have purposes besides putting something in current use. It is a different use of the lot versus putting land in current use.
Why?
Because don't woodlots require 10 acres the same as current
Mhm.
use?
Yeah.
We do.
Well, Bob has always argued
But-
that we shouldn't get rid of it.
it's a way of phasing a subdivision without saying you're gonna do it, is one, as I see it, because all you need is a 50-foot deeded right of way to get to the lot.
Right.
So you leave that and down the road, it becomes a building lot, but in the meantime,
Right.
it's a wood lot. And I really don't like it. That's how I've seen it get
Right.
used.
Right.
Um,
Right. You have a 100-acre woodlot with 50 with maybe no frontage at all,
But it's got deeded 50
but it has a
foot
deeded right of
ways.
way. So that deed of right of way now becomes a private road.
Right.
But is that deeded right of way, is that deeded right of way exclusive for just access for the woodlot purpose? How is that right of way language in the deed?
It's a deeded right of way to access that lot.
That lot or
And
that
the plan
woodlot?
says that counts as frontage. On the plans, the woodlot plans, if you have a deeded 50-foot right-of-way, that counts as road frontage.
Yeah, here's the 50-foot, it's right in section
Yeah.
B.
Yeah.
Deeded right of way providing reasonable access is considered adequate frontage
And access,
for any such lot,
any such,
woodlot.
But how does that then lead to problems though? They're still restricted to only being able to use it to cut wood. They can't build on it.
Because people wanted
Is
something.
is it a stepping stone toward the class 5 road problem or?
No, what happens, I mean, what I've seen with the problem is you have these things designated as woodlots. They're not built as residential lots. And you've already seen a couple people come, they'll want to have them removed. And some of them have very weird configurations.
Mhm.
There's one that was, I haven't heard anybody try to get it out of woodlot status. I'm not sure they could ever turn it into a building site anyway. Went through a big swamp, but up on Chamberlain Way in the mid-2000s. But people effectively keep it because they want to retain that parcel. And the idea is, at least what they say, is for generally it's forestry, for firewood. But over time, people come back and they want to turn it into a building lot or a subdivision. And really from a planning perspective, you really want to know that up front, because they're developing the frontage parcel, and there's less and less frontage in town on existing, class 5 roads.
Class 5 roads.
So now most of the new lots or subdivisions really require generating a road anyway. But people build things out and then they leave the scrapland as a woodlot, and over time, as the market conditions as I see it change, they go back and
Becomes more desirable.
becomes more desirable.
So your point all along has been, don't eliminate the concept of the term woodlot. Don't delete that. And remember, I proposed, why don't we just plain get rid of it? It just becomes land. And you said no, that because there's so many of these that are non-buildable. Your proposal is no new woodlots, leave existing woodlots as woodlots, and instead regulate exactly how they come out of woodlot status.
Yes.
And if they can't meet that, they stay in woodlot status, and that's that.
That's kind of how I envisioned it, but that was me. But yeah, give them a process to bring it out if it can be brought out, yeah.
Right, okay.
So are you saying, do we need to include the language, no new woodlots?
I think we should be explicit.
I think we should.
If we don't say they're no longer allowed, then they are.
Yeah, then somebody could come in and divide up their land and say, I want to make it into new woodlots.
So,
how should we do that and where?
yeah. Do we put that in the definition? We could put it right in the definition.
Does
We
it
could put
carry
it,
the same force if it's in a definition?
it's part of the ordinance, doesn't matter, I don't think. Or do we want to put it in last sentence of paragraph D?
D, that's what seems to be.
Let's put it right there.
No new woodlots will
As
be
of
permitted as
March 10th, 13, or whatever it is, March whatever.
As of March of 2018, there will be no more woodlot
Yeah.
subdivisions.
Yeah. You create, then
No new woodlots
lots may be created
may be created
after March X,
X.
2018, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And just curiosity, someone asked, right, what is our reasoning for that? How do we explain that? Because,
Do you want to put, I'm sorry.
no, they're gonna say, well, why don't you want to create any woodlot?
We found them to be more problematic even worse.
Right.
Simple.
Yeah, because they're so difficult to administer and manage.
They only exist in this town. It's a town-created thing. And it becomes a legal mess.
And quite frankly, it's a designation that allows people to build on a parcel that doesn't meet the current zoning standards. So they can still create their own woodlots. It wouldn't be a woodlot designation as we now have it. It would have to have the frontage and everything else, but if they want to build a lot for harvesting trees, they can still do it. It's not like we're trying to prohibit that.
No, I didn't.
But it's these non-conforming, basically you're creating a non-conforming lot, and then people want to turn it into a building lot, and it's a mess. And that's what several building inspectors we've had over the last several years have come forth and said as well, that it's really a mess.
Yeah,
People
we've
get
still-
mad because
We've seen it just these past 6 months.
yeah.
We've got, what, 6 or 8 woodlots in town that have now been built on and were never taken out of woodlot status?
Yeah.
What do you do? It's a mess.
We're working on it.
So there's no definition of woodlot. I'm not seeing one.
No,
It's
that's
not
what,
in the definition section.
that's what Bob's recommending we add
Hmm.
on this last page here.
That last page is your definition, to
This
go
is
into
the-
the definition section.
On the last page.
Instead of
Bob-
saying,
Right.
no
Yeah.
woodlots may be created, you wanna put shall be.
Yeah, probably better shall.
Okay.
That's, yep. Yep, that nails it. Okay, so was that, anything else to discuss on this?
No, that was inserted, and then the other sections were moved down.
Yeah?
And then
The
G
removal process.
was
Let's
the
go through
removal
that.
process. And there were two ways to proceed, as we talked about. It was desired to have 2 different ways. And the first one I tried to hash out, the second one needs work.
Okay,
But the first one was to create the building, turn
right.
into a residential lot.
Following the finding that the land portion meets current conforming lot zoning requirements. Has sufficient frontage, meets soil-based standards, setbacks, septic requirements.
Would it be good to add here, I'm sorry, go ahead, Scott.
I just wonder if we want to define those out a little bit more. Meet septic requirements, meaning test pit, how do you want to,
Well,
how do we define that in other times?
Yes, well, we require 4,000 square foot leach field,
Right,
test pitting.
right.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Do we want to recapitulate all the requirements, or do we want to
Just
kind of
refer them to
summarize
another
them?
section.
And
Can we just refer
that's
to
another
another
idea.
section of the ordinance?
Right, just put
With
the
all these
article
different
and section.
requirements are there? And say, just follow the requirements for a building lot in X, in chapter X? Or do you want to relist every
Yes.
single one of them again?
Yeah, as to, another.
Because the problem is, if we redefine them here, and 2 years down the road, we change the requirements of a building, of a conforming building lot in the existing section, we'll forget to do it here.
Well, yeah,
And then
that's,
we'll be inconsistent.
well,
That's
my
why I
worry-
want to, if
Well,
that
then-
section exists and has all these definitions in it, I'd rather just refer them to that, and then
Yes.
everything is in one place instead of,
And it's consistent.
right,
Yeah,
You know
my
what I mean?
worry is that this becomes the new standard.
right.
Now,
If it's different
another
from-
way, there's 2 ways to avoid that. Scott's suggestion, refer them to where the standards already are.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Or you could use what we use in patents, and I think lawyers use this a lot in other ways too. Meets current conforming lot zoning requirements, including but not limited to the
yeah,
following. You know, that way we say, these are some of them, but we're not saying here that this
These
is
are
all, this is everything.
right. I'd still want to refer, we could include that list, but I'd still want to refer to the other chapter.
Either
Then
way,
it's still, you could
Okay.
read it here, so you have an idea of what you need.
You don't want this to
You
become.
go back to the
new-
other chapter to find out for sure.
Right, you don't want this to become the new de facto standard.
That's a good catch. That's another reason to find out where else in the zoning ordinance this exists and refer it.
Yeah, because if there's other requirements, they can say, no, I don't need to meet them, I only need to meet this. It's gotta be under what, dimensional requirements?
It's
Well, I think
section 5, some of this
Is
is
it
in,
5 or 6? Yeah, dimensional requirements. Classified road, this.
Design
for the
standards
first,
are in that
A
section.
through D, I believe, is in right at the beginning of the ordinance.
Right.
Yeah, dimensional requirements, road frontage,
Lot
setbacks,
area.
flood.
Solar-based lot standards. Right? There's,
But there's further
road
stuff.
frontage.
Yeah, there's further
Setbacks,
stuff in section 6 too, so.
flood hazards, setbacks, minimum building area. I mean, that's getting into the building area, that's not just a lot. I wonder if we just want to, you can include your list there, but say as found in chapters 5 and 6. They can go through the whole thing. Is it in anywhere else?
We have stormwater management, road control requirements, and that's
That's all separate stuff
an
too.
ordinance.
I just
Do we
say,
need stormwater management just to define a buildable lot?
Depending on what they're gonna disturb, you may.
Yeah, you might.
Right.
You wanna do it during this process.
Okay,
I mean, normally, if it's a brand new subdivision that comes in, you do it during the subdivision review.
right,
So this is like a hanging chat of the subdivision.
sort of,
So-
yeah, in a way. Because you're not subdividing, well, you're not necessarily subdividing it, you could just be building
No.
on one lot.
So do you want to say, you know, using Bob's language, including but not limited to all the requirements set forth in the zoning ordinance, steep slopes ordinance? You want to just list the ordinance
Yeah.
they need to reference?
Yeah, we could say chapters 5, chapter 6, and stormwater chapter.
Yeah, I try to avoid that only because then every time things shift, you have to go back and.
Yeah, I know.
'Cause
I understand that.
I mean, this can also, I mean, you have it here, and it can all, the way it works for the other, if it's a new subdivision, it's hashed out in the regulations. So
Yeah.
it can always,
yeah, can't you,
and that's,
why don't you just say, following the finding that the land parcel meets current zoning requirements for conforming and or non-conforming lots, something like that. Just leave it open. Whatever the requirements are to build a house, you gotta meet those requirements.
I
in
agree.
fact, if you look at the,
And not stipulate what they are, because they're all stipulated here in the rest of the ordinance.
if you look at I was looking at the subdivision regulations, and that's where they actually had the application materials, so it seemed like that was the best place to put it.
Right.
And that's where you actually provide a little bit more detail about what they should be submitting. And that would be reflected in what we're trying to get at, making sure they meet these certain requirements.
Right.
And that would make it easier if anything shifts around in the ordinance, it would be
Right.
easier to reference it. But as long as the overarching objectives are hashed out, to
Right.
make it very clear for the applicant.
Right.
For the copies of the plans, don't you require the large, 5 sets of the large ones too?
We normally do, and I left that out only because it's not a full subdivision, it's just a single lot, so they could probably get away with it. I was just trying to think of how to make it reasonable
Yeah.
Right.
while still meeting our objectives.
Yeah.
Mhm. And are we gonna work on it having to be on a class 5 road, or are you going to include or to the standard of a class 5 road?
I've been told that we need to stick to 5.
I'm an advocate of 5 myself.
Otherwise,
That
it
the
goes.
5,
for-
the class 5 standards is extremely problematic, I was told.
And
the
the
other day.
highway-
That we need to, we really
We've
should
been-
stick to it.
We've been talking about there's been talk about not wanting to have any new gravel roads, and
Right.
that's what the class 5 standards
Right,
are basically, is
right,
because of the expensive paving, nobody wants to
Right.
do it if they can avoid it.
right.
But Bob, I'd recommend that you don't try to list the requirements, because no matter how you do that, you
You're
make
gonna
it-
miss something,
you
or
make it
include
in
an
the
extra
bond.
thing, or.
Just state following the finding, a finding, that the land parcel meets current zoning requirements for conforming or non-conforming lots or residential lots or whatever. Full stop. And then it's up to them to go back to these regulations and figure out what our requirements are. Because no matter how you try to list those, you may come up short somehow.
Right, and you're using the word current so they know that it's whatever's in there at this moment that they
Right.
need to be paying
Yeah.
attention to.
Right, because there's those, the conforming lot and non-conforming lots, those definitions are included, those are different chapters.
So just get rid of the whole list.
I think, yeah. I think that does make it better. It sounds like you're getting rid of a lot, but
Yeah,
it makes it easier to maintain going forward, all the language. Because we can change the definitions in conforming, non-conforming lots without having to remember to come back here and change it.
And that's fine. I was just trying to provide some detail, but certainly, once you have the application materials, you're asking for the things you want. So
Right,
right.
that would be the way of honing
It
in.
just has to be
Yeah.
a buildable lot,
Yeah.
right.
according to town ordinance.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so the second way it can be done
is the lot merger.
right.
And this, I don't know if I really approached this right. And I was thinking of, what do we want to have emerging? Just woodlots, multiple woodlots merged together, or woodlots with building lots?
Is it a merger or is it lot line adjustments?
I think we want to merge them.
Well,
What's
would
the
not
difference?
If
may
somebody,
be removed.
Well, you're in a lot line adjustment, you've retained the original lot, but you adjust the lot line as opposed to the merger. You're merging two lots.
And
But
making
it's-
it one lot.
but with voluntary merger, it's all one owner. So if you've got a 20-acre lot and a 10-acre lot and you merge them, you've now got a 30-acre woodlot instead of a 20 and a 10. Whereas boundary line adjustment, you can, like, the Penny Williams one that we just did,
Yeah,
5 acres of that woodlot went to the abutting
Somebody
lot.
else, yeah.
That was your lot line adjustment.
right. Right,
It's not
that,
the same
that part
owner.
of the woodlot is no longer a
Right,
woodlot.
Right, it's not the same owner.
Right.
Whereas
so that-
voluntary merger, it's the same owner. So who cares if it's a 20-acre woodlot or a 30-acre
Right,
woodlot?
because, I'm not understanding, so if you do a voluntary merger of two woodlots, it's automatically a residential lot? So
Well,
that's not,
after I did that, I
Yeah,
wasn't
that's not
necessarily
what you
happy
mean.
with that.
I know that's not what you mean.
No,
So,
But I think, so
it's
what Laura just said is true.
what we're trying to accomplish is how can you take a woodlot out of woodlot status? And you're saying you could take it out of woodlot status by merging it either with another woodlot or with another non-woodlot, as long as the new lot is buildable, right? As long as it now becomes buildable.
Yeah. Of two or more.
So if I've got a 10-acre woodlot, but it's not built, your
Your
woodlot.
situation.
Right, my
Your
situation.
woodlot. So if yours was not merged today and you still had the back lot that's the woodlot and the front lot that's
Right.
not, and you now wanted to build on that land, you could merge those two so that it all becomes one buildable piece of land.
Yeah.
Or if I had two woodlots, could I have two woodlots, neither one of which is buildable, but if I put them together, they become buildable?
Right. You could have two lots, each one it just has not quite enough frontage.
Right. But if I put
But
them
by
together.
combining them, you get enough frontage for the combined lot, because the frontage doesn't double as the lot size doubles. So
Right.
that could happen. You could be 25 feet short of frontage on each lot. But then when you combine them, the combined frontage is enough for that combined lot. So that could work.
So
You could have a
through-
residential lot and a wood lot, like you said a minute ago. By combining those two lots, it's now one buildable lot.
So another way that a woodlot can come out of woodlot status is either through a voluntary merger or a lot line adjustment such that the new lot becomes buildable. Is that, I don't know if that's still the right language, but that's the thought.
I think, yeah, voluntary merger or
or a lot line adjustment.
Line.
that
But only
renders-
the portion that went to the other lot came out of woodlot. He moved the boundary line moved it over so that
Right.
he was less 5 acres, but the remainder of that stayed in woodlot until you guys released it. Well, you released it from woodlot and then did the merge, that's right.
What we're saying is this is a means whereby a woodlot could potentially be taken out of woodlot status. And one
Just
way,
because you do a boundary line adjustment, you
It
can
could.
remove it?
it could, no, a means whereby it could come out of woodlot status is either by a merger or a boundary line adjustment, lot line adjustment, such that the new lot now becomes buildable,
That's me.
right?
Okay, that's opening.
And you don't, oh, okay.
I mean, that seems reasonable to me.
You did the one up on the ridge, just the opposite. He didn't have to take it out of woodlot, but he did a boundary line adjustment, he didn't change the actual acreage, he changed the shapes of the lot.
Right, but
But
that
you
was a-
didn't make him take it out of woodlot in order to be able to move that boundary.
But that was a different.
That wasn't what he wanted to do.
That's not the same thing.
He didn't want to take it out of woodlot.
I know that, but
If he wanted to
And the
take it
other
out of
one-
woodlot,
the other one did want to take it, was in the process of taking it out of woodlot. Wouldn't let him do the boundary line adjustment until it was completely removed from woodlot.
Okay, well, what
But
was,
it could have stayed in woodlot and he still could have given 5 acres to his neighbor. But instead, you guys made him take it out of woodlot before he could give that 5 acres.
we're just saying, there are two ways that we can
Yeah.
think of that you could take a woodlot out of woodlot status. One is it's buildable, and it meets all of the requirements for a buildable lot. Or you merge it or do a lot line adjustment so that it now becomes buildable.
right. But you still have to go through the process above to verify that process.
Yeah?
You can't just, bam, it's done.
Well, no, it still has to
You
be.
have to prove it
Right,
according
you'd have
to,
everybody in town
Still
do a
has to-
voluntary merger and getting rid of the woodlot status, like instantly.
right, you
Because
still have to go
A
through,
lot of people do not like that woodlot
you
status.
still have to go through the process
So,
above.
okay, yeah, I'd say okay.
But
You
then they
have
can
to test it,
subdivide.
you have to basically test the new lots
And it can
according to
only
the process above to
move
see if they're buildable,
the plan
right?
board.
Yeah, Someone will describe that.
Well, it has to be tested according to the zoning ordinance.
Right,
To become buildable, it has to conform to all the
Right.
requirements of the zoning ordinance.
right.
As long as it
In the
does.
same manner as above.
Right.
And it's only the
Non-conforming
planning
and
board that can
non-conforming lots.
remove the woodlot status.
It's only,
The planning board that can remove that status.
Bob states that.
Yeah.
He said,
the
may be
information.
removed at a public hearing of the planning board by
Yeah.
majority vote in
Yeah.
one of two ways.
Yep.
Yeah? Yeah, I don't see, I mean, if people want to remove it from woodlot status, and they can do so by making the lot a buildable lot,
Mhm.
why would we not want to allow them to do that?
Does a woodlot have a minimum dimension?
10 acres.
10
10
acres.
acres.
Actually, all of them that have been generated are 10 acres, but we revised the language a few years ago, and it doesn't have an acreage limitation anymore. But Paul, yeah, Paul proposed it. But every woodlot we have in town is 10 acres or more.
I've got a list of ones that I put on the list because they're not 10 acres anymore.
Well, they must have been
I didn't know we ever changed that. I've always been told it had to
That
be
must
at
have
least
been
10
lot
acres.
Yeah, it was until, it was when Paul Breslavicus was on the board a few years ago, we went through a process and changed it, so it doesn't specify.
Yeah, it doesn't say 10
but-
acres, you're right.
But
No, it doesn't
until then, up until then, as far as I know, it always, at least as long as I was on the board, it was always 10 acres. And
Yeah.
somebody told me when it was first developed, it was 10 acres, so I don't know how they got to be less than 10.
We've got a couple on Brackett Road that are only 5, one's 5.5 and one's 4.3. There's no house on one of them, there is a house on the other one, they've actually built on it. There's another one up on Birch Hill that's on that subdivision we had that issue with, it's somewhere up there, I can't remember where exactly. There's like I got a list of about, what is it, 8 or 9 of them that came to you guys for selectmen?
Well,
for
this
review?
will eliminate that problem in that no new woodlots may be created.
Right.
When was
Now,
the
we
la-
don't care what size they are anymore, there's not gonna be any new ones.
When was the last woodlot created? I mean, have there been any created in the
New?
last 5
When was the
years?
last subdivision done?
The
You
what?
guys haven't done a subdivision in, I don't know how long.
Yeah, it's been a while. We did one up on North Shore Road, on the, just past Paul's place, several years ago. Up, it was,
There was an application, I thought that didn't go forward.
Kodiak
no, it
Wood
did.
is the one that didn't.
I thought it did, didn't it?
Kodiak Wood went through,
No,
but then
no.
it got,
No, not
remarked.
Kodiak.
But I don't know about the one on North Shore.
I thought the land wound up being bought, and in order to stop that
There's one on Narragating Road as well.
You remember that?
The old
There was-
Nixon
that's
house.
not the-
Property that was
Oh.
subdivided.
That was.
Jeff
we-
Rattel.
I think
they're-
Chris- yeah.
They're bringing out
I
woodlots.
was gonna say,
Yeah.
Rattel was the last
But
subdivision that I
they
know.
subdivided it and then they put another woodlot back in the back.
Oh, that's right, they did. They have the two
They
frontage lots.
reconfigured the lot and then they
Yeah,
recreated a new woodlot.
that goes up
in
a
the
real
back.
steep slope.
Yeah.
That's another example of what
Right.
people do, and then they come back, years later, somebody wants to build
Yeah.
up there, and it's a very unsuitable, an inhospitable area. I
Yeah.
mean, it's maybe okay for forestry, but even there, it's pretty steep, but they can get up there at the right time of the year, but.
Well, it seems to me, if you stick to what you've said here, which is the only way to take it out is to come in front of the planning board. It has to be buildable according to our current regulations for conforming or non-conforming lots, and the other way is either by merging or lot line adjustment to become buildable,
Right.
whatever that right language is.
Right.
To meet,
Yeah.
through merging or a lot line adjustment to meet current zoning requirements for conforming or
Non-conforming lots. Yeah,
Just say it
there
the
you go.
same way.
Yep. Yeah, basically repeating that same language
Yep.
that we put in paragraph 1.
That seems fair to me. If you've
Yep.
got multiple pieces of land and none of them conform, but you can combine them and they do,
Yeah.
then I don't see why
Yeah.
that's unreasonable.
Right, because you have to have the frontage on a class 5 road.
Still gotta meet all the standards.
Right.
One other problem, you guys don't approve voluntary mergers. You turned that over to the building inspector, code enforcement officer.
You would have to point that out. Well, they can,
Because this says with board
But-
approval and you don't approve. You approve lot line
but he
adjustments.
can't do,
Is that in the zoning ordinance, or is that just a decision?
Yes, it
that
is.
was made?
It was voted to turn that responsibility over to the building inspector. Voluntary mergers are handled by the building inspector.
Oh.
And what criteria does he use?
that doesn't, where, that doesn't, I don't have that language in the zoning ordinance.
Maybe it's in your building regulations then. I know I read it somewhere and Peter Barney read it and every building inspector.
Yeah.
Well,
This, we still have to bring it out of woodlot status, so that part we still have to
There's-
deal with.
right, he can't do that. The building inspector can't,
There's nothing about mergers
But
in the
there's
zoning.
nothing here that says you have to take it out of woodlot status before you can merge it. You're talking about a voluntary merger of 2 or more woodlots.
yeah,
It doesn't say they have to be removed from woodlot in order to be merged.
No, we wouldn't require that. That's the whole point. We're
Then
gonna,
you wouldn't have any,
no, they would not be merged until the planning board says that they can be merged because they now,
you don't have,
Conform.
voluntary merger is done by the building inspector.
I don't see, it's not in the, that's not
It
in the
is
zoning
done by the
ordinance.
building inspector. It was voted to turn that power over to the building inspector.
'Cause
It
there's
is
nothing
in
about
here
it
somewhere, I don't know exactly where, but I know that in the 10 years that I've been doing this, it's the building inspector that's.
Well, I think this is unique. I wonder if we get rid of voluntary and just say a merger of 2 or less.
yeah,
Because they still have to call it what you want. They need approval to get it out of woodlot status. So maybe
Yeah.
voluntary in this case isn't quite right
Yeah.
to use. Because voluntary suggests they already have the authority given to them to
Right.
merge them, but here they need
Yeah.
approval from the planning board, so.
yeah.
Okay, so if somebody's reading this, okay, and it says that they can merge two woodlots, where does it specifically say that they have to get the planning board's approval, not the building inspector?
At the
Because
beginning.
somebody's gonna read that and they're gonna say a merger, okay, I'll do a voluntary merger, I've merged my lots, there's nothing here that says they.
No, it says,
It says the woodlot agricultural lot designation may be removed at a public hearing of the planning board by majority vote in one of two ways.
Yeah,
And the second way is a merger or lot
Right.
adjustment.
Okay, then take out voluntary.
Yeah.
That
That's
is
all there.
handled by the
Yeah,
building
that's all
inspector.
there.
okay, yeah, and you could even change this to the woodlot agricultural lot designation may only be removed at a public hearing of the plan.
yeah. Yeah. There you go.
Because that's the current
That-
Or
language.
that's-
do
suggests-
you wanna put shall in there again? Shall is more specific than may, legally.
You're right, it's.
Shall only?
Yep.
Shall only. Yep,
Okay.
that puts a hammer down on it. Okay? I think that's pretty decent.
I think that works, I like that.
Yep.
All right. Are we done? Do we need, why don't we get your language before we, would you approve this?
So why don't I
Let's
I'll
rewrite
take
it.
yeah.
Let's rewrite the
I'll
language.
take
on
all
that.
that,
Table
head
this
out for the
to
weekend
December.
and then next time.
Yep.
The other question I've been asked to mention to you is, remember we have a conflict in our zoning ordinance where it says class 5 or standard to class 5. Somebody would like that more clearly.
Yep.
That was fine.
That was our chairman's assignment, actually.
Was.
Want to table that to?
I think we better take out the standards. I think we need to keep it at class 5, period.
Yeah,
You can go to the zoning board and get the ZBA and get a variance or whatever. If
or
you
you can go to
can,
the selectmen.
yeah, or go to selectmen and get your
I
road
almost,
as class 5 or class 6 road.
my instinct says that's the only thing we can do, because I think state law and all of our other requirements require us to do that.
Yeah,
We say you can't build on a class 5 road, and the state does too.
yeah.
So I think we have no choice but to clarify that it's always a class 5
Yeah.
road, period.
I thought in the RSA it said to the standard.
That's what we want to clarify.
Yeah.
It's a class 4.
I don't know. Yeah, what are class 1, 2, 3, 4s? I have no idea.
Class 1 would be a big state highway.
It would be like an
interstate highway.
interstate.
But the lower the number, so 1 is the highest, that would be the real big road. Class 6 are your trails in town, like a snowmobile, ATV, they're technically roads, but they're all very, or seldom, most towns don't maintain them year round, so they aren't really navigable.
So the roads are
Ron Gill
right
gave the
here are
definition.
class 5 roads then?
5.
Right,
Right here in
Yeah.
town?
right.
Yeah, this is a
Class
state
4.
road out here, believe it or not.
Could be a
Is
class
that,
4.
is that
So it
still
might be a
class 5?
It might be even considered class 4, but most of our roads are class 5, and some, like around Mare Meeting Lake, they're considered class 5, but they don't meet our current class 5 standards. They're too narrow or
Right.
other limitations.
Agreed.
The definition that was given the other night for a class 6 road is any discontinued road that was closed with gates and bars. That's what I was told the other night at the ZBA meeting.
So if it's closed
I
with
thought-
gates
huh?
and bars, that means it's still a town road though.
No, discontinued. If it hasn't been maintained for over 5 years, the town, it's not,
No,
it's
no,
a
that-
class 6 road.
But Attorney Mitchell told us, remember that was that case with the Whites? And because it said gates and bars, it was a town road.
Right, it's a class 6 road, it's not a private road, because the argument
Right.
was brought up the
Right.
other night.
Right.
Somebody wanted proof that it was not a private road, that it was a class 6 road, which I was able to provide to them, because in the 1985 town meeting, they discontinued from 10 Ride to the gates and bars and gave it to the Cardinals, the people who owned that,
So
on
if
both
it's-
sides of it.
And
And they called it a discontinued Class 6 road with gates and bars.
okay, but that means it's still a town road, but if it's, but like, wasn't Edgerly Road found in 1881 to be totally discontinued?
Yeah, that's
That
an
means-
Yeah, the one up in North.
That's
Yeah.
abandoned.
Yeah.
That's
One
abandoned.
in north end of town.
Right.
Right, that became an abandoned road.
That's
Right.
abandoned.
We've got them all. We've got, you know, private roads, we've got abandoned roads, we've got discontinued roads, we've
Gate and
got
gates and bars.
gates and bars.
Right.
we've got-
What's Devil's Den Road?
I don't know.
Has to be a class.
Yeah.
It's a class, well, you know,
What's
that
your
was,
description?
well, interestingly though, wasn't that at one time the major road from Wolfeboro to New Durham?
Mm-hmm, pretty
Mhm.
much.
So I'll bet that's a class, it's gotta be at least a class 6 road. Just given its history, I don't know.
Unless it was abandoned.
It was
What is
paved at one time.
What is a road that is a dirt road but maintained by the town? We
Yeah.
have dirt roads that we
Yeah.
maintain.
That's my.
That's
Oh,
what I
are
thought.
you-
Huh?
They keep
And
it
very
class
well
5 standard.
maintained.
That's a class 5 road?
That's class 5
Yeah,
road.
it's class 5.
So class
If
5
the
road?
town plows it,
doesn't
town
have to be-
maintains it, it's class 5.
5, yeah.
Okay, even if it's dirt, so
Yeah.
class
Right.
5 doesn't necessarily require
Right.
asphalt.
Right.
Okay.
Which is
believe
what
that's
we've talked to the
class-
Wets about.
It's part of private.
So Middleton Road would be
Yeah.
a prime example of a class 5.
Class 5,
Right.
dirt.
Quaker
dirt
Road.
It's a non-conforming class 5,
Parts of private.
Middleton.
Is
It's
it,
too
is
narrow,
it,
it's
is it
not-
too narrow?
Yeah.
It's got culverts.
Oh,
It probably is too.
Well, the dirt part of Ridge Road, or Berry Road, sorry, is not all that wide either.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, I
Was
live on it.
Was it you who mentioned John's issue with junk cars and such becoming visible now?
No, I mentioned it.
Oh, you mentioned it.
He mentioned it to me.
There is
Yeah.
there is a section of the zoning ordinance that deals with that.
Yes, he knows.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was just,
He's just saying that there's been a lot more of them since the leaves fell off the
Oh,
trees.
okay. But we do have a nuisance.
Leaves hide
a nuisance
a lot.
yeah,
ordinance.
he's aware.
It's a little, it's another one, it's a little vague, but
Yeah. All right.
It was just another thing that stressing him out.
Right.
yeah, more judgments here.
Okay, any other issues to discuss here? Are we kind of done with our zoning ordinance? I mean, are we exploring new changes to the zoning ordinance is maybe what I should ask? Are there any new changes? I might consider, I've been trying to pull together enough info to create a tiny house thing, but it's scattered. It's very complicated because some tiny houses are on wheels and are considered RVs.
If a tiny house is on wheels, it's gonna come under this trailer,
It's gotta be registered.
this RV ordinance.
I just wonder if
Can they
that's how we
register
wanna
a tiny
handle it.
house?
What?
Can they register a
Yeah.
tiny house?
Yeah. You can tow it.
But,
It's-
but
It
if,
can be done that way.
but if we enact the language we just talked about tonight for RVs, it would
Right.
fall
Then
under
you can get
that
a permit, a residential permit.
for 6 months of the year, but you couldn't get it for the full year. So come winter time, you're out.
Well, then that's not gonna work.
It can be parked, but you
Then
can't
that's not
live
gonna
in it.
work for a tiny house.
So if this is
That's true.
enacted, a tiny house could not be lived in year-round in New Durham. You'd
Well,
have
that's
to
Most of the
fine.
carve,
tiny
Unless we change
houses
the
are
law.
500
you'd
square
have
feet
to
either.
carve out.
Right, well, that's gonna have to change.
And how do you define a tiny house separate from a trailer? I think is the
If you
difficulty.
can't, if it's not on a trailer. Tiny house doesn't have to be on a trailer, it can be on a trailer, but it can also be built on a solid foundation.
Right.
Yeah, I think if it's on wheels and movable and it's using a.
But what if you wanna use it year round? What if it is insulated and it can take hot and
Well,
cold water?
If you can allow
Et
that,
cetera.
you can allow people to live in an RV or a travel trailer
Yeah,
year-round.
that's the problem.
You can't allow
That's some
one
of
and
the
not the
problems.
other, I don't think.
Is it fixed in the ground? Like, is it
It can be.
somehow?
It can be. But
But
it-
I'm saying if it is, does that?
Yeah, I wonder
then you've
if
got
we
the
could get
square
around that,
footage.
if your tiny house is on a trailer with wheels, it's not, you can't
It's
live in it
classified
year
as an
round
RV.
unless you make it not movable.
Right, right. If
You
it
have to
becomes-
take the wheels off and fix it in
becomes
place.
fixed to the
Temporarily?
ground.
At least semi-permanently. I
So it
mean,
could be a trailer for 9 months of the year and fixed to the ground for 3 months.
I guess I would not want to make it easily reversible,
What if you,
is
so
how
that
I would
if
want to
it's-
word it.
If it's on wheels, it's under the same classification as your RVs and trailers.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I don't,
And if it's on a foundation, it falls under the same regulations and
but I don't want to do that either.
with the
Because,
exception of
because they
square
want to
footage.
allow less than 500 square feet.
Right,
Right, right.
then
What-
put an exception.
Right.
Yeah,
But it still has to have the DES septic, it has
Yes,
to
yes.
meet all the building codes
Yes.
except for,
That actually
with the
might-
exception
That might not
of,
be that hard to do after all.
yeah, why
with
not?
the exception of the square footage.
Because all I need to do is have a paragraph for tiny houses, and just say there are two classes of tiny houses. Tiny houses on wheels are
Which fall-
regulated as
which
an
fall
RV
as an
under
RV.
chapter X,
And,
Yeah.
and,
And one's on
and-
a foundation,
right?
and if they have a foundation, they are regulated as a dwelling of less than 500 feet. And
Right.
you write up some regulations for
Yeah.
dwellings
Yeah.
of less than 500 feet.
Yeah,
And that covers a yurt.
yeah.
So would you then?
yurts aren't necessarily on a foundation.
Well, they'd be
Yeah,
really-
they are. They don't just sit on the ground.
The one that, I saw
No,
pictures
no,
of
but I'm
this.
saying if a yurt is on a, somehow, but then how are they movable? I don't
They're
know.
not movable anymore.
Well, that's the whole
Oh,
point.
like cabins
But
on
the whole
islands.
point of a yurt is
Considered
that it's
seasonal.
movable.
Right. Yeah.
Well, maybe you can have a yurt and
Right,
decide this is gonna be
maybe
your
I'll call it a
permanent
yurt.
dwelling. And I think that's the plan.
Well, it
to
has to
leave
be,
it there.
well, it would have to be a
Then it
fixed.
would need a full foundation underneath it.
A full foundation, okay.
Isn't there someone nearby that's building in tiny houses? One of the towns, not so.
Barrington.
Yeah.
Barrington?
Yeah, there's a guy building
Well,
tiny
it's
houses
either
in
Barrington
Barrington
or
for
Lee,
veterans.
it's up that way.
Oh, it's
For-
Lee.
For veterans.
Yeah, I think it's Lee.
Just-
No,
just
no,
up.
that's Peter McDonald.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a little different. It's a church.
Oh,
Okay. still.
He's building
yeah,
a
this-
tiny house church.
Yeah, for
This might not be that
homeless
hard.
veterans.
Right, he puts homeless veterans up in tiny houses. That's how I heard, the first time I ever heard about him was
He's
when.
been fighting with the town of Lee for about 10 years.
Part of the problem is a lot of the tiny houses don't meet the 7-foot ceiling for IBC, International Building Code.
They don't need a lot of buildings.
Yeah, I know.
Well, the reason I asked about the local, if they're making them local,
Most
that
of the
probably means
yeah,
local
the
people
ones I see
buying
on
them. So
TV are.
are there other similar standards in towns around us that are being conflicted by this?
I
haven't
did
heard
a
anything.
couple different Google searches for tiny house regulations, and
I can't
most
find
people consider them ADUs and do it that way.
Well, John told me.
But I
if
don't want to do it that way.
You call it an ADU, you can't control the number of rooms or
Yeah, but
bedrooms
ADUs,
by state.
But ADUs can be
can't
less
be
than
smaller.
500 feet.
They
That's
can
why
be
they're-
less than 500?
in
Well, by state
some
law, they
places.
can.
I think so,
We
yeah.
don't allow it here, because we still have 500.
Well, we haven't addressed ADUs yet.
Right, you haven't addressed accessory dwellings yet.
Not really. I mean, we
Not
have.
really,
No,
not-
they are
yeah,
defined,
they're in there,
but,
but-
we need to
No,
expand
but
our
what
definitions.
I'm saying is if somebody came to us right now, Durham requires 500 square feet for a dwelling.
Right.
That's for a dwelling, not an accessory dwelling. There's a
I
difference.
think we
I,
do.
we
No,
do, I think we do, I think we
address
do
it.
define it as
Accessory
500
dwelling.
feet. I think we do define it as 500 feet, but we have to address that whole thing.
Right.
We do address accessory dwellings.
Yeah, but we
What I
don't,
think we don't address is whether we allow detached.
right. Well, there's all the new law that went into effect this year changes a lot of things.
Yes, it does.
Right.
We have to define parking and septic and other issues.
That's why it's on the agenda
Because-
for next year. to
Right.
have
The problem,
time
yeah,
to
the
work
problem
on
is
it.
when we created our ADU chapter, we were allowed to restrict on what lots ADUs could exist. And we do restrict it, I think. I'm pretty sure we do.
We restrict what?
The way our language about ADUs now restricts on what lots you can put an ADU. It has to be
Yes,
certain,
yes,
it has to be a
absolutely.
certain size. At
Yes,
least.
and as you go up in the bedrooms, the size goes up.
Right. The new state law passed this year says every lot in town must be allowed to have an ADU.
Right.
And according to John, you can't limit it to one bedroom.
Oh my, really?
That's right.
Okay.
They do say that. You can't say it.
But the catch is you can still incorporate, you can still say the whole,
Septic requirements.
the whole, I don't lose my word. Can't drain through the ground.
Percolation.
Yeah, the
Perk test?
amount of land that can't drain, the
Impervious?
impervious surface, thank you. That's the word I wanted. You can still restrict the total impervious surface on a lot for non-conforming lots and things. And you can still say it can't be 10 feet from the shoreline. You can still say, stuff like that. So in those ways, you can restrict how big and how the ADU is. You can limit the maximum size of buildings on that lot.
Yeah, I forgot how this new state
But
law
it's-
is written, but it does allow you to regulate the size within
Right.
certain limits.
Right.
I've forgotten what those limits are.
Right. That's why we have to go through it all.
We currently limit to 750 and 850 total,
Is there a minimum?
not under accessory dwelling units.
Huh.
We just have the dwellings, I think, are 500, but not
Okay.
accessory.
So that might be in state law. I don't know. Because that's why the tiny houses are coming in under ADUs, because there's not a minimum square
Because
footage.
there's a minimum, well, he remembers there not being a minimum, I thought there was, but
Yeah.
no, I would trust Jeff's memory. But there were a lot of flaws in that, new regulation, but I don't think we should really rush quickly.
Maybe we
because I
should
think
wait
they're gonna
another year.
bump into
Let them
problems.
correct it.
No, I think they're very aware that they're gonna bump into problems and they will have to make some, adjustments. Because, it was a little bit too loose,
Yeah.
too open.
Yeah.
And that's why they're encouraging towns to get their regulations in place,
Yeah.
because it is too loose and
Yeah.
you could end up with some
A bunch of bad ADUs.
Speaking of
sticky situations.
accessory dwelling units, the definition for dwelling unit, accessory, I'm confused by that definition because it defines that as a single accessory dwelling unit. I'm confused. What does that definition mean?
Accessory dwelling unit is an accessory
Accessory
dwelling
dwelling
unit. That's what that's saying. I know. We're
I
gonna
think that's
fix
a little
it.
circular.
Just a bit.
We'll fix it.
Yeah, no, we clearly have to go through, I did a whole table of what our ordinance says and what the state law requires and where we're in conflict, but I haven't looked at that in a long time. That takes some study. And we do have some latitude, like, do we want to allow unattached ADUs? That's up to us as a town. We have to allow attached, but we don't have to allow unattached.
Attached to what?
Attached to the
primary
primary
building.
structure.
Has to share a common wall.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
So why isn't it just another room? Well, because it
it's
has,
cooking facilities
Yeah,
and,
right,
yeah,
right.
bathroom.
Cooking, living.
That's what Rochester has. It has to be
Right.
attached because my sister was looking to build on her land for my mom when my father passed away, build something so that my mom could be in it, but independent on her own. And they told her it had to be up against one wall of the existing structure.
so it becomes a dwelling unit.
It could have its own entrance and, own privacy, but one wall had to be shared between the two. It didn't have to have a doorway. They just
No.
had to be connected.
Yeah, that was something
Join
towns
the
used to
center.
require, that it had to have a doorway between the two. Now that's gone.
Right.
But why would we not allow someone, if they have land, why would we not allow them to have a separate structure?
My worry is, and this is what I talked about when we went to that seminar, my worry is on waterfront, which is very valuable.
Right.
And it does
Double the-
everybody on waterfront convert their garage, attic,
You've
basement.
doubled the load.
And they rent them out by the night, by the week.
Right.
Yeah,
The-
that's-
the
that was not the
Airbnb.
intent. The
Right,
intent was for senior citizens to age in place and students and
right.
lower
Well, the problem
income.
is that doesn't the new state law explicitly state that
They
accessory
can-
dwelling units do not have to be related?
Right, and
Right.
that
Do
can.
not have to meet family
Not,
members.
does
That's
not have
correct.
to be related.
So it's a separate apartment.
Yeah.
Right,
correct.
so it can be.
And there's nothing in the law right now
It's
that
true.
says if I wanted to do this and turn my basement into an ADU and rent it out by the night,
Right.
nothing, or the week or whatever.
Right.
There's nothing you could do to
I don't
stop
think
it from
you can
happening.
stop that.
Right.
And the question I asked at the seminar of the lawyer was, can the towns regulate that? So could we as a town say, yes, ADUs are permitted in accordance with state law, but the minimum rental period is 30 days
Right,
in order to stop short term? And he really didn't have an answer for that.
right.
I don't think, I
He-
don't
he's-
think.
He
Yeah,
said it was-
that's, gets into property rights.
He said it
Yeah.
was recognized by the legislature that this is a problem and they are going to revisit it, but he didn't have an answer. You know, if we were to do that,
Mhm.
would we be legally entitled to do
Right.
that?
I think we probably
I think we don't know.
I mean, that would be like somebody that is renting an apartment. Okay, it started out as a in-law apartment years ago, but the
Right.
in-laws have passed away, so now they rented it out as an apartment, and they rent they do a yearly lease. And you're saying, it's up over their garage,
Mhm.
and you're saying they wouldn't be able to rent it out for more than 30 days?
No,
at a
no,
time?
no, no,
Not
no,
less
the
than 30
opposite,
days.
the opposite.
Not less than
Not
30
less
days.
than 30 days.
Right.
The rental period must be 30 days or greater. So you can't rent it out by the week, you know,
Right.
on the lake.
Right.
And make a
I
ton of
don't know,
money.
that would be
I would-
slippery slope.
When we attack ADUs, that's a question I'd like to ask
Yeah.
a town attorney and find
So,
out.
just be looking for training or workshops on ADUs. that
Yep,
are
I've also
offered.
sent an email to Stratford County Regional, to get price, they wanted to know prices for our consulting fees, why we came up with the
Right.
number we did. So I've sent an email, I haven't heard back from them
So,
yet. She sent me one email and said that she had received it and she was passing it on, but it might be a little bit, because there was something they were working on, but she has given it to the team that would handle that. I'm figuring maybe sometime before the holidays, because with the holiday
Yeah.
season, everybody's,
Right.
limited
Right.
time, so, but I'm hoping to hear like by the first of the year.
Right. What has the Butters Board done? Have they finalized the planning board's budget? Or is the meeting it open still?
No, I
No,
think
it's
we're all
been
done.
finalized.
What?
Monday morning, we kind of finished on Tuesday night, and Monday morning we'll do all the final figuring. So your budget passed.
They
Well,
cut it.
that's what I'm
They cut
trying
it
to
a
get
little.
at.
Yeah,
They cut it a little, they took away some of your advertising.
Yeah.
Don't ask me why.
No,
They take it-
wait, well, unless I got the wrong number, what they did was they didn't add on the extra if you needed it for the, other, like the newspaper. So whatever you have.
Right, because we weren't gonna use Foster's,
Right.
as we had said, we wanted to
Right,
use Foster's.
but there
we're
are
not.
times when you have to
Right,
use
but they didn't,
Foster's.
you're right, but they,
So what am I, if I have to do that, and I don't have the extra to pay for it, but we'll figure it out, it'll come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And document it, Laura, and next year we have it as documentation to justify that.
so they gave you the
This
money.
year, I showed how many ads went
Oh.
into Foster's, how many ads went into
And you weren't
the
impressed?
Baysider, and how much they cost.
Right.
Okay.
I'm gone.
But I'm waiting on the consulting fees, we haven't
Right.
heard that back
Right.
on yet.
Well, it looks like we're gonna get stuck with whatever money we get anyway, so.
I wanted to be really mean.
All right. Anything else to discuss tonight?
We'll do what responsible groups always do. We'll just keep spending
Just
and let somebody figure it out.
I didn't do that.
Is our next meeting December 5th, or are we meeting on the last
No, this is our second meeting of the month.
month? Okay,
So-
so we're not
We're
going
set.
to
Until
we're on
December.
December 5th,
Yep.
okay.
I will be absent on the 5th.
Well,
I'm giving a presentation
can you,
on the 6th.
can you forward your stuff before then?
Yes, I will. I'll get everything to to everything.
Okay, that should be fine.
Presentation on what?
On companion